We will begin, open the meeting of the Manchester by the Sea Board of Selectmen. John Round,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
Kathy.
Here.
And Ann Harrison is here. We're going to divert from our normal order slightly and take the swearing in ceremony for David Coe and Sean Mullins before we have public comments on non-agenda items. So, if the gentlemen are ready.
Everyone else did.
First?
Yeah. Hey, guys, wanna come up?
Is this something for standing up?
She's, we don't have to. So, thank you to the Board of Selectmen for allowing us the opportunity to swear in the Manchester's newest full-time officer, Officer David Coe and Officer John Mullins. You know, as I think I've said before, the ceremony is the pinnacle in an officer's career and always something that you can remember until the day you retire. So Officer Coe comes to us from the Gordon College Police Department, where he served as a patrol officer since 2017. When not working as a patrol officer, he continues to serve his church in Woburn as an educational ministry director and the director of youth ministry. Officer Coe holds a master's in divinity, a master of science in architecture engineering, and a bachelor of science in construction and urban engineering. Officer Coe is a graduate of the Methuen Police Academy in 2018. He's a certified EMT and a weapons armor. Officer Mullins began his career with us in 2019 as an auxiliary police officer. He was promoted to reserve officer and part-time dispatcher in January of 2020. In February of 2021, Officer Mullins became a full-time public safety dispatcher. And in July of 2022, he was appointed full-time police officer. After his appointment in July of 2022, Officer Mullins attended the Linfield Police Academy, where he graduated on April 28th for the second recruit officers class. Officer Mullins holds a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice with a concentration in criminal investigation and a minor in legal studies. He also holds a Master of Science in Criminal Justice with a concentration in criminal justice. He's a certified EMT, and he's received 2 life-saving awards since his tenure here with the Manchester Police Department. Officer Mullins has also done work with mentoring academically disengaged students from Salem High School, both in a group and one-on-one setting. These activities include field trips, workshops, and the one-on-one settings was academic help, assistance with school-based subjects, and guidance with personal matters. So as you can see, both these officers are welcome members of the police department. Their training and skills in helping and mentoring youth will be a huge asset for us, and it strives to accomplish what we are doing with our community policing. So I know I'm speaking for the rest of the department and everyone here, welcome and congratulations. I look forward to working with you both. So at this time, Diane would swear them both in.
Do you solemnly swear that you will uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the bylaws of the town of Manchester by the Sea, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as full-time police officers to the best of your abilities and knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, thank you very much. Finally, the ceremonial pinning. I'll ask Sean's mom and David's daughter to come up and pin their badge. We can get a nice photo of that.
I'll get it right next time. I got it. Pretty good. Oh, there's gonna be a quiz.
Excellent.
Now can we clap?
Yes.
Get next to your board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes the short.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Just in time for the summer rush.
Get the dogs off the beach.
More.
Are there any comments on items not on the agenda? Comments from the public on items not on the agenda?
Not seeing any.
In that case, we will move on.
Oh my God.
We'll move on to interview Leah Peavy for the Board of Health. Peavy, I'm sorry, I murdered your last name.
No, you had it perfect.
Is this the only people that caught off?
John,
Run the thing.
questions?
Yeah, no, I saw the background, the brief background here. You've spoken with the chair of the Board of Health, I assume, Paula?
Yes, the
Well,
Board of Health,
you're here from the Board of Health.
the Board of Health strongly encouraged you to please approve her.
Okay, all right. A lot of healthcare background here, and we appreciate you raising your hand. You're a busy lady, doing a lot of different things. Well, maybe not a lot of different things, but what you're doing keeps you pretty busy. You're gonna have the time for all of this, because I assume that you spoke with.
Yeah, I currently work part-time right now, so yes, I feel like I do have the time to do it, and I'm excited.
Have you done any community type of service activities, boards or committees before?
When I first moved here a while back, I served on like the library planning committee. I did that, maybe like 10 years ago. I volunteered at the school, in the library there. I coach youth soccer.
All right.
Types of community, but I've never served on.
This type of board?
Correct.
I'm sure it'll be great.
I'm gonna ask you something
Yes.
here. Am I in the, did I miss this, or is this what I'm going?
No, river. This would be the planning board that you're looking for, which is also meeting at about this time.
Oh, it's not in here. That's
No,
what's-
this is the
No.
select
I
board.
thought
This
it
is
was-
the planning board, and I'm not sure. I know
I
they're on the
The
agenda.
planning board was 3:00.
Oh, was that what it was?
3 o'clock,
Oh,
6:30.
I know it was today.
It's 6:30,
They must have moved it.
May 22.
May
May
22.
22, okay, you're off by a
Today
week.
is the 15th.
You
Next
haven't
week,
missed it
next
yet.
month, next week.
No,
Next month,
don't want
yeah.
those guys to.
You're still good.
Good for you for asking, good for you for asking.
Well-
Yeah, you're still good.
Great dry
How
run.
did I get that? It's supposed to be next week, and here it is, a week from next week.
Right. But you're free to attend if you wish.
Well, I got the DCC.
Well, lots of fun.
Where were we?
You had just concluded your.
Oh, I'm
comments,
done,
and I was
yes.
going to.
No, I'm good, physician's assistant, I have no questions. John always asks.
Kathy?
You have a terrific medical background, so that's certainly not in question. Just curious as to what you believe the role of public health is, and how you would approach it. Is there anything in particular you're looking to accomplish as a member of the board?
I mean, I think first, just trying to learn what the role is. Peter's been updating me on like kind of what the role is, so trying to figure out how I can use my background to, I definitely have a strong public health interest, and especially after going through COVID. I mean, hopefully we're not gonna go through something like that again, but,
Not at least for maybe like 98
know.
years, probably come back again, yeah.
yes, but I definitely became very interested at that point in time. I did a lot of work on COVID units there at Brigham and Women's Hospital, so yeah, so it definitely sparked my interest.
Thank you.
I guess my question is along the same lines. The Board of Health handles a wide variety of.
As I'm seeing, yes.
Yes.
I know I have a lot to learn.
Do you consider yourself a quick learner?
I feel like I'm.
You could say either quick or thorough, and each would be a good answer.
Yes, I was gonna say, I consider myself to be, yes, a thorough learner would be, hopefully a quick learner as well.
Well, you
So,
have-
a willing learner, for sure.
Mhm.
So I move that the select board appoint Leah Peavy to the Board of Health to fill the remaining term of Tonya Colpitz through June 30th of 2025.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? John,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes,
and I say yes. So,
congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Now we got a pile of work for the way
Yeah.
out.
There you go.
Back up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item on our agenda,
Can I just make a
Certainly.
small comment? We actually didn't go over action items, and there
oh,
was
I'm
just,
sorry, yes, you're right. Let's back up and do the action items. Well.
so for today, I thought we had everything covered that was going to be due today, but I just wanted to mention, I think there was one that was missing from our last meeting. We had talked about the early voting, and we're supposed to have a follow-up. I didn't see it on the action item list, maybe I just read it wrong, but
It was put way down because the next one would be the next state primary, wouldn't it? For early
we're
voting?
supposed to collect data from the next early voting
Yeah.
opportunity. I'm looking at what's in the package, and I apologize if I'm missing
I
it.
thought I put it
just-
on there.
It doesn't-
I thought I got the,
looks like it.
oh, okay. I got the date from the town clerk and then I must have not put it in here.
That's okay, I just
It's
wanna
for-
make sure.
it's a while though.
It is, and those are the things that tend to get
Yeah.
dropped and forgotten,
Yeah, and
so-
I asked her and I got the
Yep.
date. I must have not put it
Awesome.
on.
That's the only thing I saw missing.
Okay, I'm gonna note that down here.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, now we're ready for the Water Resource Protection Task Force recommendations. Chief Gang,
Hey,
could someone give him access to the screen?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share the screen.
All right, you should have that now, Steve.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, here we go. All right, can you see the title page?
Yes.
Now we can.
Excellent. So when we were in front of you on April 18, you remember we presented one organizational recommendation and 9 policy recommendations. And what I took away from the meeting about the policy recommendations, which were these, was that we should focus our efforts, if we're continuing, on the conservation steps, which are really numbers 1, 2, and 3. And they're I think the word is synergistic. They work together. More smarter meters that are digital will help us recommend more effective conservation policies and rates. And at the same time, we will hopefully working through the sustainability committee or some other board or commission that's currently existing, we can help increase conservation awareness and education. But tonight I wanted to focus on water rates because that's a topic that usually comes up for you in June and gets enacted for the beginning of the fiscal year. And we have some well analyzed and considered recommendations. So let me start by where we are today. These are the rates you voted last June 30. And you see they run from about $6.55 per 100 cubic feet for the smallest amounts to $9.23 per cubic feet for the largest amounts. That's a spread of about 40%, 140% for the top versus 100% for the lowest. And that's relatively narrow, according to the experts we've consulted with, but not unusual. It would put us in a survey of 2 years ago, the most recent survey by the MWRA. It would put us here, where the red bar is, out of 140 communities surveyed. What these numbers represent is for a given amount of water, which in this case is 12,000 cubic feet per year, what would a household pay? In Manchester, that'd be $746. It goes as high as $1,300, and it goes down into the $400 range for some communities. So there's nothing unusual about our position today. This kind of spaghetti graph shows you where we are compared to local, other local towns. Ours is the heavy dashed black line right here. You can see there's a bit of an increase from the lowest to the highest. There are flat rate communities like Salem. There are communities that have a little escalation like Hamilton, which has a bit more than us, or Marblehead. And then the outliers are communities like Topsfield, which deal with the chronic shortage of water there by starting at much higher rates and going up rapidly to really expensive rates, high 20s, $20 per 100 cubic feet. And for reference, that would translate into about 2.5 cents a gallon, whereas our rates kind of straddle around 1 cent a gallon. For comparison, if you're going to buy drinking water at Walmart in bubbler or from a bubbler, it might be around $1.50 a gallon. If you buy it from Poland Spring in the supermarket, it's around $5 or $6 a gallon. These anomalous lines for Essex has an unusual policy. They slap a flat rate on every household using water, which means if you're not using much water, you're paying through the nose by the drink, so to speak, by the gallon or cubic foot. But as soon as your usage gets up to relatively high cubic feet, it tails down quite a bit. So nothing unusual about our rates today. Certainly room to move compared to local towns, and what we understand is the growing trend to use rates as one of the tools to conserve. Just a footnote, this is the rough count of households out of about 1,900 using households hooked up to water system, which is basically all the households in Manchester. Over half of them are in the low first and second tier. Another almost third are in tier 3, and then just a smaller number in tier 4, smattering in tier 5 and 6. What we're trying to do here is encourage conservation by all households, and what that really means is to focus on those using the most drinking water in summer. Second, to recover full costs, which is the definition of an enterprise fund as I understand it. Typically, you set the rate so that you will cover the cost of operating the treatment plant and the distribution system and meters and billing and such. And we think you should obviously continue that, but it might be smart to include in those costs some of the cost of sourcing water, sourcing clean water. So steps you might want to authorize to prevent future contamination from, let's say, capped landfills near our reservoir. And that would, and currently, essentially, the product itself, the water, is free. We charge our users for treating it, distributing it, measuring it, billing them, but not for the product itself. Third, if we're proposing changes, we need to allow time for people to adjust and for conservation initiatives to ramp up and for new meters to get installed. So we're thinking in terms of recommending that you phase in these rate changes. And finally, and very importantly, we want to avoid any significant risk of reduction to total annual water division revenues, because the enterprise fund exists in order to offset the costs of operations. And if conservation was unusually successful. It could in fact cut into the total revenues, which would be a bad thing. So this is a good time to tell you, before I show you the numbers themselves, that the changes we propose will not increase water bills for 60 to 70% of the households in Manchester. In fact, they'll decrease slightly in our recommendations. And we will not raise the average water bill across all households by more than 10%. But obviously, we will increase water bills noticeably for about a third of households and dramatically for the top 50 or 100 users who tend to, their use explodes in the summer. Specifically, these are the current rates and the tiers. We're recommending going from 6 tiers to 4 tiers and implementing these new rates gradually over 3 periods. So this is the end point, and here are the 3 phases by tier. Essentially, we're recommending combining tiers 1 and 2, which are relatively light users and are well below the recommended 65 gallons per capita per day, which comes from the state. And also collapsing tiers 5 and 6, which are relatively few people, but characterized by very large use of drinking water, particularly in the summer. So the change would be from, mid $6. We're recommending $5 as the move you make in a month or so. From $7.30 to almost $8 to $8 and $15, and from $8.50 to $9.25 up to $20. So you see, it is a major rebalancing of the rate structure. We've run this rate structure for a quick review past a professional consulting firm called Raftellus, and their reaction was that phase 3 is quite dramatic and would put us kind of out on the bleeding edge, at least in the Northeast, of differentials between the lowest tier and the highest tier. But in terms of average rates, much, much less impact, and in terms of rates for most of the bills, for most of our users, very little impact, if any. In fact, a noticeable reduction. So they do not say that about phase 1, which has only a 4 times difference between the $5 lowest tier and the $20 per 100 cubic feet highest tier. So one of the important things here is how this would impact the households in each of these tiers. So we created a model which has been quickly vetted by these expert consultants. And what we did was figure out what people are currently paying on average in each of these tiers and how that would look in the future. So, please focus on these 2 lines, which are our recommendation for the immediate change. In this case, tier 1, people are averaging $148, tier 2, $354. As a group, they would drop to $140. Not a huge reduction, a couple of lattes a month probably for most households, but certainly a positive step in a climate where everything else is going up. Tier 3, 670 households paying $819, that would go to $920. So about a 10% increase, or 12%. Tier 4 at $44.53 would go to $4,800. Tier 5 and 6 at $8,000 and almost $20,000 would go to an average of $14,600. The average here is $10,000, go to $14,600. So this would represent a 40% increase for roughly 60 households. These numbers vary year to year, depending on whether we have drought restrictions, whether people are putting in new landscaping, and a few other things. But this is our sort of best educated guess, so that the July rates would reduce annual water bills for about 58% of the households. Think of them as they're the conservators. These are people who are already meeting all of the sort of gold standard metrics that the state and the federal government put out. 10% increase for another 39% of households. The 3% at the top, the 60 households on the far right here, would see their annual water bills rise about 40%. Please interrupt me if you have questions along the way here. The other important criterion is the total revenues into the water division. And forgive me, there's a train coming by, as you'll probably hear out your windows, but it's a lot closer to mine, so I may mute for a second. Well, what we did here was calculate what the total expected revenues in the system are if there is no conservation whatsoever, if there's what we call significant conservation, which is 50% reduction by everybody in the top two tiers, the new tiers 3 and 4. Dramatic conservation would be 2/3 reduction in those tiers, plus 20% in tier 2. So virtually everybody, the dramatic conservation would be action by virtually everybody who's using water, using water outdoors. But what we found doing this was that the most likely outcome, which is very little, if any, conservation, will actually increase revenues from $1.5 million to $2.3 million from residences. With significant conservation, would come back down to about where it is today, 1.55. It's only if a very unlikely event of dramatic conservation happened immediately this summer would we see insufficient revenues to cover the costs, and we'd have to dip into the reserves in the enterprise fund, which I'm not positive about, but I think are around $500,000 today. So this is obviously to be avoided, but we are assured by the experience of other towns and by the advice of these experts at Raftellus that the most likely outcome is this one. If people don't change their behavior very much, there's very little elasticity to price changes in terms of water usage. So why do it, you might say? Well, we believe that the combination of these rates plus some strong intentional steps to make it easier for people to conserve, to get them better informed about how to irrigate, about how to landscape, what the alternatives are, and even about how to self-source irrigation water, which could be a private well, it could be conservation of roof runoff, and even gray water usage. So there are options. We think the combination of, call it the carrots and the stick, will have the best effect. A couple of other things we have put in here. Well, one is that you'll probably want to restate your policy slightly. But another is that there's some specific issues in the way we currently handle billing that we recommend be changed. The first is that we bill multifamily units typically with a single water meter. So each unit is charged for the rate that applies to the cumulative use of all the units. We recommend that the rate tier be set by the usage of an average unit of each complex, which wouldn't require any changes in plumbing, just requires a change in the billing system, which we believe is appropriate when the new meters are installed. Might even be necessary. Second is deduct meters, which many people have who are using town sewage, so that they don't get charged for sewer usage when they're using water outdoors and it's not returning through the water treatment plant. We're not recommending changing those in their operation. In other words, there should still be a way to keep yourself out of sewer charges, which are considerably higher per cubic foot than water charges. But we are recommending that the billing system be adjusted to combine the indoor and outdoor usage of any household, so that rather than kind of getting the benefit of restarting the rate tiers in each of your 2 meters, if you have an inside and a deduct meter, your rate tier is set by your total usage, as it will be for people who don't have deduct meters. And third is a promise that we'll give you a much more detailed implementation plan and timetable, particularly for conservation initiatives and how we might roll them out when we give you a final report next month. And I think I'm gonna stop there. That was kind of a fire hose version of these recommendations. There is a lot of backup, and underneath all of this, there is a rather ornate Excel-based model of what happens to categories, tiers, and to total revenues, depending on different assumptions about the rate structure, and of course, different assumptions about conservation.
May I interrupt now?
Yes, please, I am all ears.
Can you go back to the slide where you talk about changing the policies? Yeah. Why do you suggest dividing the bonded capital?
Well, you have always done that. You've divided
Yes, but
operational
why-
costs from capital costs.
Why determine it annually rather than at the time of the bonding?
Oh, because one of the positive byproducts of what we're recommending is likely to be increased revenues in the Water Enterprise Fund. And if the Finance Committee and you agree that it's prudent to spend some of those to accelerate some of the work that requires capital expenditure and even borrowing, then you could determine, the Finance Committee could recommend that some of that excess be applied that way. So rather than it being paid by all taxpayers, it would be paid by water users. Except, of course, the water users are pretty much the taxpayers. But in this case, it would say, what pocket will that portion of the capital cost come from?
Personal comment, I think we've got ahead of ourselves here. We haven't seen what, in fact, the result of the rates will be. And if it's not what you're anticipating, I don't see why we're doing that.
Or it may be too soon.
It may be too soon, yes. A lot of this seems a little soon.
So,
Sorry,
question.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Did you say you can't tell what the effects would be?
I would like to see the actual effects before we decide to change our policy on how to meet capital costs.
So along those
Okay.
same lines, Steve, this is Kathy. So the task force's recommendations here is a phased approach. And I think one thing we didn't see is, let's suppose we agreed to increase the rates, like, reduce it from 6 to 4 rates and increase it as recommended. How much time do we need to evaluate the ramifications of doing that before we consider another rate adjustment and/or a policy change? Is that kind of getting?
Yes, I
maybe-
was working my way backward to that,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I personally like the idea of fewer rates,
Mhm.
because when running a rated service, you wanna cover your costs, but the only reason to really have more than one rate is often to drive different behavior. So the fewer rates you have with more differential between them, that is clearly understood by the customers, that all can add up to true behavioral change. So in general, I like where we're going, and I like phasing, so that's good. But I do think we need some understanding of, okay, let's say we do phase 1, how much time do we need to assess whether or not that was successful and had the desired effect? And I think I'm missing that in the presentation.
I don't know the exact answer, but I have some suggestions. We suggested 6 months because usage is so heavy in the summer. If you make this change right at the beginning of the summer, 1st of July, and if we begin the pilot testing of new meters at that point, we'll be able to see relatively quickly whether it has what we expect, which is minimal effect on conservation. Now, there may still be, another drought, No one can tell, and therefore there may be voluntary restrictions, which have been relatively well followed
So
by
question-
users.
Question for maybe Greg, so, let's say the new rates go into effect July 1, and then people will get their first bill reflecting the new rates when,
So we bill quarterly,
right?
so it would be in the fall.
So they'll get the new rate, they'll get their new bill in September, right?
September, October, yeah.
Okay, so if they get their new rate, new bill in September, then they notice, ooh, okay, I either got a savings or my bill is bigger. That's the end of the summer, and so,
I think you need to have a second.
yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I
Yeah.
think 6 months may not be enough time to evaluate the impact of a proposed rate change that's designed to impact behavior in the summer.
18 months.
I suspect you're right, particularly because we'll only have a couple dozen
Yeah.
of these new meters in place, which enable people to see what they're actually using much more frequently than quarterly.
Are you making any effort to see that the heavy users get the test meters?
Well, we'd like some of them to use test meters, yes, but I can't
I'm
tell you who's signed up yet, because I don't know.
seriously concerned that people will open their bill, some few people will open their bill and discover that it's gone up enormously after it's too late to fix anything. So,
Right. Well, certainly, we're not gonna try to surprise them with this. We're gonna, the reason we need to, one of the first things we need in informing and engaging people is to reach out to the top 200 or 300 users and say, this is the change, and just for your information, this is a potential impact if you used exactly what you've used over the past 5 years, so that they're on notice.
why do people,
Because without that information, you're right, they'll just be surprised.
they'll
and
be
that- we don't want
horrified? And, would it be possible, could you consider sending out a bill with the calculation at the
A
norm?
big bill, or a look ahead. like-
Projected bill.
Projected
Yes,
bill,
a
right.
projected bill.
Based on past needs.
Based
That
on-
could be done, when is the next bill going out, which is for the
Because
second
it's
quarter,
gone.
or I should say the fourth quarter? Are these
Got it.
calendar quarters
Done
for
in
water?
July.
So I think it'll come, next bill will be received.
July,
in
August?
July,
In August?
Late July, yeah.
I just got a water sewer bill.
All right, so,
This today, 1/26.
so that's a bill that could be targeted for
So
the
that was
top
thir-
50
You just got your third
users.
quarter,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
That could
we
be targeted
we
for the
could-
top 50 users to put some information in about this is what's going on.
if we're
Really, it
able to keep
affects
some
them, yeah.
If we're able to keep some players on the field from the task force, we could certainly draft and you could approve an insert for those bills that does exactly that. It could be customized for some fraction, small fraction of the users.
A projected bill, and also, it is a small enough population, we're a small town, we got a lot of, I mean, if the timing of the next bill isn't quite right, we can still do that and just send it directly to those 50 people, right? We can,
Yeah, and now you're
outside of the
really
timing of the
talking-
next bill, just to make sure they're given a heads up.
Exactly. I think the way to influence their behavior is not just to make these changes, but to work with them with the changes. And for some of them, it may, it may not be possible to do conservation, but I would love to have the conversation with them and find out why that would be. Offer them some alternatives. We have greenscapes. We have some information about wells, and we can get a lot smarter about private well drilling before we have the conversation. And we know something about the state of the public and private distribution system. And we'll know a lot more when the new meters are installed. So there's a bunch of things that could be in that conversation.
When do you think the new meters would be installed generally? How long time, how long that will that kind of transition take?
Yeah, let me defer to John. John, if we got the meters up and running in July with a test phase of a couple dozen, 2 different vendors,
Yeah,
what do
it's
you
not very
foresee as
many.
the time to?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's not very many, and so we have to be kind of choosy on who we'd like to target for those, especially since it's a summertime installation, so that's where the consumption really changes. And, you know, it's 4 months, 5 months, 6 months at the most, maybe by the end of the year, you've got all of the data, and you've also got some opinions about which system we're looking at 2 systems. Which systems people prefer. And I will say these systems are, they're very much state-of-the-art. They have apps where you can actually look and see what your water is doing at any point in time on your cell phone. And lots of other capabilities, very data-rich applications. So we would probably make a decision is somewhere in the first of the year about which particular vendor makes sense. Obviously, you know, all of the things that go into decisions like that, money and everything else. And then start to move toward installing them on a broad basis. And the overall cost, which we haven't discussed with anyone, but Chuck has money to work with, is somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million. And given the inelasticity of adaptation to conservation, some of that money could come from a water rate if the water rates were increased, and you saw if they were increased on the first step, you'd wind up probably with several $100,000 more than you otherwise would. And that could be used, and then maybe some comes out of our capital. That has not been discussed, but we are going to speak with the Finance Committee on this in June. And get their
So
thoughts.
in other words, there is no financing for a broad,
Yeah,
distribution.
exactly what pots the money is coming from, that's correct. But what did he say, it took about a year or so to put the meters in, maybe a little more? As I recall the presentation, they'd go through waves, different sections of the town.
Yeah,
It'd take,
I think a year was the outside for them, because we're under 2,000,
yeah, it's not a big project for them.
not a big project for them.
but we haven't got identified funding, and the funding comes from the town meeting, and
That's right. But none of this would start, installation would start until, say, the middle of next year. It's still a year out.
so,
But the broad ones, the pilots cost, Chuck says that's a rounding error in his budget. That does not cost much of anything to get the data and make some decisions.
Yeah, and that would suggest at least a year with new rates, unless there's any kind of dramatic reason to change them, instead of a 6-month cycle. I agree.
I think I've heard that the cycle seems a little short. And I worry that we're not giving the heavy users the information that they would need to start changing their landscaping, changing their practices before they get hit with a huge bill. And that makes me very uncomfortable.
I would like to see, it was discussed, we have a historical database of everyone's water usage. And if we could just take the most current one, apply these new proposed rates, based on the previous usage. So last year at this time you spent X, this is now what's gonna cost you this after this, okay? Projecting it out.
Right, I think that's what we're.
That's
That's what I'm saying.
projected.
I'm just trying to simplify it for me. And then, to your point, I think it's gotta be a minimum of 18 months before, because people are gonna, if they see over the summer what it looks like now, you wanna give them another year to adjust for comparison purposes, I would think.
Well, all of the data that are in these tables, of course, is based upon real data from all of the customers. They're grouped into various groups, but they're real numbers.
Question,
Yeah.
do we
10 years
have, we've had a very, very dry spring. Do we have a sense as to what our water levels are right now?
Our water levels look very high at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting,
I don't have off the top of my head, but we do have that
okay.
information.
Which is interesting.
And I'm not
Snow.
sure, I'm not sure
It
you're
was
right, that it's
snowing
been a very
anyway.
dry spring, is that?
It's been very dry the past couple of weeks.
Well,
Weeks,
we-
certainly have.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get a whole lot of snow in the winter.
But we
And,
did get some rain.
yeah, I suppose. I don't know, maybe, I've been here,
So-
I haven't seen it.
Something is clearly,
Okay,
Gravelly Pond, as of
Good.
Alan Wilson and I walking there Sunday, is as high as I've ever seen it.
cool, okay. So that's good. Now, what I was poking at was what is the likelihood of us needing to implement conservation measures townwide like we had to do last year? So are we at a higher level than we were this time last year?
I think we are actually.
And then so there's not going to be any town, not a likelihood of the town having to issue.
It just really depends what happens in June and July.
Yeah, and we're not the canary in this coal mine. The canary is Hamilton and Topsfield and
Yeah.
other people who draw out the Ipswich River.
I will say, changing the rates in July is not going to, it'll probably prove the inelasticity of the whole market, which all of the consultants say, people don't change their habits very much with water. Even at the high rates, they don't change very much, and I know that, I think you've spoken with a couple of people at the high levels, Steve, and they're more concerned about taxes than they are water, to be honest. But,
Yeah. They generally make the point that this $10,000 of water usage is trivial compared to their six-figure property taxes.
yeah, and everything that we learn is going to be in the summer, because of course in the winter, those people who do tremendous amounts of irrigation aren't using any more water than the average person. So everybody in the winter is tier 1, maybe tier 2, that's it. Nobody's seeing tier 3, the new tier 3 or tier 4. That's all a summer event.
Yes, barring leaks, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for your time, and hope these land positively with you, and you'll see the rest of the recommendations around and findings around contamination and sources and other conservation steps in a month's time.
There is one more thing, Steve, that I might add, and that's the couple of people that will survive this task force in the sustainability group. They're gonna be carrying the ball. And some of the things we've talked about, inserts into bills, and some of the strategy associated with how all of this is gonna fit together, is gonna be those folks. Because this task force will dissolve in the next couple of months.
Isn't it a combination of the DPW and,
The DPW is dealing with probably
Still
at least half of
right,
those. They're going forward, but they're not dealing with the conservation details and the details of the data that are coming out of these 2 pilot studies. Not that they don't have the capabilities, but frankly, their plate is pretty full, and if there's somebody else that can kind of look at that and say, oh, I see some trends here or something there, you know, and then someone to kind of work the PR side in terms of how this all gets communicated. Those are the folks that are gonna be carrying that ball.
Just like to see that the people who are going to be most affected get
a heads
Get
up.
an
alert.
A heads up.
No, this is absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You know,
we-
we've
we-
spoken to a few, but not most of them, and I don't know if they're all in the same.
It's somewhat different
Thank
too when you say, oh, your water rates are going to go up than when you get the bill.
Yes.
Right, but that projected bill,
The
like.
projected
You're better off saying, I told
can
you
actually-
so.
Send that to them, that's a very clear
Yeah.
indication as to
Right,
what
I
it
think
might
that
look
that's
like, and
important.
then we would
Yeah.
know what their
And
reaction
the
is.
projected bill could include, for example, their success at conserving water during the
Right.
voluntary restrictions last year, because some of them were quite successful. So to
Yeah.
contrast,
Yep.
so here's your average for 10 years, and here's what it was in last year when you restricted your use. So they'd have, guardrails around the possibilities.
The task force is going to be in place for another couple
In
of
a
months.
couple of months, yeah, I guess.
Could they take that on as a priority chore to produce the estimated bills for all of the, new tier 4 customers?
It's the model, I think the model can generate that by tomorrow.
That would be wonderful. I mean, it's the math, right? You got the input, you got the rates, it's just math, spreadsheets.
Yes, we've got everybody's used by
Considering the
household
volume.
by quarter for the past 10 years, so it's all there. Just to be sure, should I use the phase 1 proposed rates as the stalking horse here?
Yeah, they're not radical rates.
They're not that radical.
No.
I think maybe you ought to use your target rather than your first step.
Well, the problem is, see, I think as this thing evolves,
Yeah.
that target is just a number we kind of picked out of the air.
That's
And-
pretty intense, yeah.
And we don't know if that's gonna be the target. In a year and a half, we may say, oh, based on feedback here, that's not where we should be going. We should be at some other number.
I would recommend using the phase 1 recommendation
Yeah,
and just say, hey, we're restructuring the rates. This is what we're planning to implement, but we wanted to give you a heads up, and here's what your new bill would look like if you consume the same amount as, previously. Please send your feedback to blah, blah, blah. Give them specific instructions to send their feedback to a particular place so that then we can learn what the reaction is, and if you get no feedback, then
and maybe say something like, we're anticipating to go higher with the
Yeah,
upper
yeah.
tiers, but not give a specific
I wouldn't,
number.
I would not go straight for the high
No.
targeted rates, that's, because we're not even sure, I think, that we need to go that way.
No, yeah, we are.
from What I'm hearing.
The 70% of households that use less water, it's also pretty easy to generate a guideline that says, if your water bill was $100, $200, up to maybe $500 a year, which would capture 3/4 at least of the households, here's what you can expect from these phase 1 proposed changes. So I think for most of them, that would be received as really promising.
My experience is that the people who get good news forget about it,
Right.
and the people who get bad news call.
That's true.
You're right,
Or they
2/3 of the
don't
people,
care
That's
because
it.
they're
you're not gonna hear
yeah.
from 2/3 of the people.
Anyway,
Gotta do something,
In-
team's
in-
done good work.
in the next month or so, when you come back, we would like to hear that those numbers have been worked out and there's a way to distribute that information to the most affected parts of the population.
Aye, will do. Thanks again.
This is hard work and you're doing a good job.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kudos to John as well.
Thanks very much, Steve.
The next item is the quarterly review for the police chief. Okay, clearly you prepared this a month ago.
Yeah, so some things have changed.
Can you go over the changes since then?
Yeah, just on kind of high level, so as you know, we've made the switch to regional as of March 1st. That's been well received by the officers, and have gone pretty smooth so far. Some of the things that have been done since then is we have been made all the audio and visual connections for the safe lobbies. The lockdown buttons have been installed in the police station. I'm not sure about the town hall yet because we're still waiting on a couple of doors that are going to be shipped on Friday. And we along with the fire department, went over to the new records management system on May 8th. So that's been working out pretty well. The comprehensive emergency management plan, you guys should be looking out for an email. I have it on a DocuSign, so once it goes down the line, you'll get the email and you sign it and bring it back, rather than trying to get everyone together and do it all at once.
Love it.
Fine, yeah.
Good job.
Okay. The advantage of coming together is we can discuss it.
Well, I thought
Okay.
you've reviewed it and,
Okay,
you know, yeah. The only feedback I've got was from the Board of Health, and I attended the Board of Health meeting and answered some of their questions that Mark and Han had, so that was the only feedback I got, that's why I sent it out. Let's see. As you know, Officer Mullins graduated the academy, he was sworn in tonight. He did a very good job. We have one officer remaining in the academy. We'll get out the end of June. And then moving forward next year, after July, next quarter, we'll be looking to finalize our additional hiring with the new staff members that were approved for FY '23. Looking to complete the safe lobbies downstairs. We're looking to conduct a active shooter drill with the town of Essex. Sergeant Loof is just in the preliminary stages of reaching out to try and get some assistance with that through EOPS. And the plans are underway with Bion to start that staffing the harbor come June, when the school resource officer is back from her duties at the school. And I will be attending some MEMA training in June. It's called CPOD training. It's the commodity points of distribution, how to set that up and make sure that runs smoothly. So, with that, that's where we kind of stand.
Again, really excellent job on the dispatch transition. I'm glad it's working out really well,
Yeah,
and
it's gone smooth.
I just can't thank you enough for that. You mentioned you did go live on the records management, so that's good. So if I recall, there's still some historical or legacy data conversion that we're gonna use the dispatch officers who are still working for us until the end of the fiscal year.
So that's in process.
Is that in process?
That's in
And
process. Sergeant Newton is kind of heading that up.
okay.
And we're working with Chris Ryan at Regional.
Do we have a particular schedule for like completing that, or how much, because once they're no longer available, right?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how we,
So
Figure out
what the dispatchers are kind of doing now is we have what they call a master name file.
Yep.
And in the old system, we have duplicates, so they have to go through it one by one and delete and merge that data. And then we'll hopefully, I'm hoping by the end of the year, it will be
fiscal year or calendar year?
calendar.
Calendar year, okay, so, because we're no longer gonna have those personnel, who will be doing that type of work is my question.
Sergeant Newton is gonna be, he's like the point for the new IMC system, and he will be working on that along with his additional duties.
Okay. Yeah, because that stuff doesn't get any easier, it's just ugly work and you gotta plow right through it, okay. Good for him, okay.
I mean, that's kind of right up his alley.
Awesome,
Yeah.
good, if it's up somebody's alley, then keep us there, it's important work, important work. Last question was, I was really pleased to see some of the training that the officers have been undergoing. And you mentioned that there was a cultural awareness and diversity training that you thought might be beneficial for town employees and other town employees and perhaps some of the volunteers. And is that something that can be made available?
Yeah, we talked about that last time. I just have to get with Greg. Maybe we can discuss it tomorrow at the staff meeting, and I can send the link out.
Do you have this information, the training for the your personnel in a learning management system?
Yeah,
that
we
tracks it?
have a system called PMAM, and it tracks all training,
Right.
it tracks policies and procedures. I'm actually looking into look at what the rec has, it's called Power DMS, and transitioning that over, because our system now is a little hard to use. And the new system, the Power DMS actually has an app for your phone, so they could get on their phone and look at the policies and procedures right in the road. So they also, that Power DMS is also owned by our scheduling management software, Planet, so we might even be able to get some sort of.
So I was wondering, Greg, if you're, or Todd, if you're reporting, if you're tracking whether or not officers are meeting their annual training requirements, and whether or not, Greg, that is something you're also overseeing. So we have had some issues in some other departments where training has not been conducted as we thought it was, and you know, I just want to make sure, it sounds like Todd's got a really good system there, and that's something that you should also have access to, that high-level information. You know, what percentage of the officers have met their training requirements for the year, and making sure they get done by the end of the year.
Well, they have to, they all their regular in-service, they have to meet that by June 30th, because it has to be sent to the new post commission.
Right, so the post helps you with a lot of that, but some of this other training is probably just because we want to do the community policing or have a different culture here. And I think, Greg, we just want to make sure that we're staying on top of helping the officers get properly trained. Because it sounds like they have a really good track record.
So when I issue those training videos through
Yep.
Maya, I can issue them through that PMA software.
Yep,
so
and then
they're all
it tracks it. Awesome, that's great. So excellent, really pleased with the way things are going. Thank you very much.
No, I think you did a great job. I think everything, the goals we set out last summer, have been exceeded. And just keep it going, that's all. I think I'm very pleased.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy with the way things are going with the police force and the way you're managing it. I have 3 questions. First, you've got the staffing. How many active police officers are you going to have adding the 2 tonight, Sean and David?
So total, after we get the new ones hired, we'll have 14.
Okay, so you still got to get
One.
one more. Okay, right. The number was 3, but 2 of them. These are 2 of the guys. There was one you added
Yeah.
I don't know, back in January or something. But it's new.
So
All right, so you need one more.
So Sean Mullins was the one that we added last fiscal year to cover the person on 111F. David Coe is a new one that's supposed to be
Right.
for FY23, but we had extra money in the budget too,
Okay.
starting early.
All right, good. So this is really supposed to reduce the overtime costs. And I wonder if you could provide to us at some point in the near future what the overtime costs were first quarter, second quarter, which is not over yet, and third, on a quarterly basis, we should expect to see that number, well, certainly trend down. I don't know where it's gonna go, but it's supposed to go down.
It's supposed to go down, and that was the whole plan when I put this together. So we're averaging about 170 a year in overtime
Yes.
costs. But now that we may not have to cover the lobby all the time,
Right,
and not backfill that position, I see that going down. However, we still have 2 more to go to the academy with the new addition of the 1 more after July 1st. So it may be up a little bit the first part of the next fiscal year, but right after they get back in the academy, I see the overtime going way down.
all right. Well, as a reference point, it would be good for us to get the quarterly numbers. The finance committee's probably asking you this question.
No, they haven't asked.
Oh, is
yet.
that right? Okay, well, we're asking.
I'm assuming they will.
Yeah.
I'm asking. So I'd be interested in that. Question number 2 has to deal with we will be embarking on kind of a communications program with the public in general. And I know you have something going with your Coffee with a Cop and maybe some other things.
Mhm.
It would be good to get a list of the types of events that you've done over the past quarter, or maybe since the first of the year. Would you know, you could go back and say, yeah, we did 3 of these and 2 of these. I don't know where I'm going with that, but we have to come up with ideas, and anything we can piggyback on what you've got there, and it all contributes to overall communication with the public, and that would be helpful. So that could be done, also perhaps on a quarterly basis going forward. Whenever this report comes out, you might put that as an addendum, we did this study there. Third, what's going on with the Westerhoff dog?
The Westerhoff dog has been followed up on by the animal control, and we had 0 issues since we had that hearing, and he's complied with everything.
Okay, well, I assume no news is no news,
is good news.
but
I've not heard a thing.
just haven't
Yep.
heard anything, so it's just
Yeah, she's
curious.
inspected everything that, with all the conditions have been followed, and she's inspected it.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with John that it would be nice to have a part of your quarterly review, including both, overtime and forced overtime. And if you could kind of backfill for the, since last July, so quarter by quarter, because we probably do things on a fiscal year rather than, so,
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, I can pull it right out of the plan schedule.
Yeah.
Just,
It's pretty
so we see where there are jumps.
good. Summertime, you'll probably see it more than the wintertime.
And so there'll be somebody in training.
Yeah, so I'm hoping, once we get the last person hired, gonna send them both to the academy after the summer. So that way they'll be going in like November and getting out now before the summer. And we'll send them both at once, so then by the next fiscal year, we should be all set, barring any unforeseen
Yeah, let's not anybody get hurt.
circumstances, yes, exactly.
Um,
But the retention's been pretty good since the new contract.
so how is the feeling in the force?
I mean, it's overall, it's positive, it's good. Very surprised with the regional dispatch. It's been very well received. Very, very well received.
What do you need from us?
Another contract.
So, yeah, we do need to do
Was
that.
that, this is the
Yes,
year?
so,
Yes.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so that is, that'll be on the agenda at your June meeting.
So our next meeting, his review cannot be late, okay, because we're gonna
Yeah.
be doing this again very shortly to make sure we, get the contract.
That's it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the support and everything you guys have done.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Is there
very
any
much.
other-
Yep.
No,
great,
thank you very much.
thanks.
See you tomorrow.
Now, we move on to the fire department, and we have.
Computers now.
You're gonna go to record sheet?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You plugged in?
Yeah, I'm in right now.
Oh,
Greg, is there something in the chat? I see a little red dot.
I'll just get a pen.
No, Chuck was, commenting about the gravelly pond.
Oh, okay,
We're at 30 feet, which is very close to being full.
awesome, very good. Thank you.
Okay, you're all pins, you're good to go.
I'm trying to get rid of this.
You see, 30 feet is full, and we're very close to that.
Excellent.
Get rid of the screen, we'll be in good shape.
I assume that you would, Greg, that you would let us know if there were anyone attending virtually who has a.
Yes. I do track that.
You, Debbie, somebody let me know, because
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't wearing my glasses, so I just noticed it.
Thank you, folks. I've done this in an overview of, I did it about 3 months ago, so some of the data has needed to be updated since then, along with the financial charts that I gave out. However, this morning when I went to finish the project, for some reason my computer would not give me access to any of my Excel files. So I will explain it as best I can based on what I put in here. And then if you have any questions, feel free. So this is a basic overview of what NFPA 1910 that covers apparatus requirements and recommendations. I highlighted a couple of the areas. The yellow area, apparatus more than 15 years old may only have a few safety upgrades that are required. And consider the value or risk to firefighters keeping fire apparatus more than 15-year-old in first-line service or front-line service, as we say. In blue, recommended that apparatus more than 15 years old that have been properly maintained and are still serviceable be placed in a reserve status, be upgraded to meet the NFPA 1910 standards, and incorporate as many features as possible. Every time 1910 is updated, a lot of that has to deal with safety, with vehicle airbags, with new types of seat belts, with new types of warning devices, and they can get outdated pretty quickly. And then in green, the final is apparatus that are not manufactured to those specs or that are over 25 years old should be replaced. So those are the national guidelines that cover fire apparatus. So our current,
Can I interrupt
yes.
you just for, how close are our neighboring towns to following those?
No idea.
Okay.
I don't know to what degree they hold their standards, and there we go. Kermit the Frog is not mine. That's okay. So this is our current apparatus. The year we purchased it, what the vehicle is, when it is due for replacement.
Okay, is the replacement for the ambulance is 2027?
Yes, that's correct. And this was also outlined in the chart that I believe you all got, the Excel spreadsheet, which I'll follow up with. That's in here, and I can go into a little more
This one?
detail. Yes, that one there.
It was in the package.
Yes, good. Hopefully you all read it, and if you have any questions, feel free.
And just, excuse me, just on that, what was in the package, it was nice, it had the apparatus fund balance.
Yes,
So if I read it correctly, we've got enough money to do what we need to do, or we don't?
we don't.
We don't, okay, so that's the part that I was,
What we would have, there were two different ones in the packet. One was including Squad 3, and one is if we sold Squad 3.
they weren't labeled that way, so that's, I saw,
Okay, in the packet, I
only see one.
only see one.
Okay, then that was the
That's
updated, then that was, I eliminated the one that had Squad 3 in it, so do any,
Because this one looks like this, it's year by year, which is great. The fund balance is always above zero, so that's why I was
Right, but
thinking that.
that includes, what I did was, and I'll get to that, if you wanna hold off, I can
Okay,
explain what I
okay,
did,
sorry.
but I just wanna run through this, cause
Yep.
I know you folks had mentioned you wanted to know what we have and what it does.
Okay, yeah,
So this is ambulance 1, the only ambulance we have currently. This is the basic equipment it carries. It runs on all medical aid calls. Engine 1, our primary engine, 750 gallons of water, 1,500 gallon minute pump. That's all the equipment we carry on that. It carries our primary vehicle extrication equipment, airbags, cribbing, rescue struts, air packs, basic water rescue equipment, saws. So this is our primary toolbox based on our staffing model. This has as much gear as we can safely pack onto it. And again, this was either a demo or a grant purchase as a stock truck, so it wasn't necessarily designed for the equipment. The equipment was fit to the truck.
Back up just a second.
Sure.
When you say 48 feet of ground ladders, is that,
That's a
that's the sum?
yes, that's a sum. We have a 24-foot ground ladder, and then a 14, and then a 10-foot attic ladder. And that's the complements of ladders that's carried on the engine.
Talk to me just a little bit about what an attic ladder is.
Attic ladder is a folding ladder. It's narrow, it's about 10 feet, it folds up about this wide, and then you open it like this. And it's to get up into attic scuttle hatches or small areas in the building that we couldn't access with any of the other ones. Ladder 2, our primary area ladder, 500 gallons of water, 2,000 gallons a minute. Pump, as you can see, it has 123 feet of combined ground ladders plus a 100-foot rear-mounted area ladder. It carries our backup vehicle extrication equipment, more extensive rope rescue equipment, and various hand tools. Squad 3, 200 gallons of water, a 1,500 gallon minute pump, limited hose line, limited ladders, and a much smaller complement of tools. And then utility 4, in the winter this serves just as a pickup truck. In the spring through fall, it's also our forestry truck where we put in a skid tank with a pump so that we can go off-road. And that carries all our brush fire fighting equipment. Car 1, that's my vehicle, it's the command vehicle. Multiple radios on multiple frequencies, 4 gas meter, jump kit, traffic cones, my turnout gear, and a thermal imaging camera. So some important considerations. The status of Ladder 2 being able to pass emissions. Last Friday afternoon, after Power Products came and got the truck running in absolute tip-top shape, the best it has ever run as verified by their computer and our guys that have driven us, we took it for an inspection and it failed again. It failed the opacity test even worse than the last time we took it before the repairs. And no one has come up with a magic bullet or any other suggestions as to how we will ever get that to pass the opacity test. There are a couple other minor things that it failed the inspection for, but that is the big one that is yet to pass. Squad 3 doesn't function as a full-size engine, significantly less space, significantly less equipment, water, hose, and everything else. It's called a mini pumper for a reason. It is not a suitable backup for the aerial ladder or for our engine 1. So, in comparison, a properly equipped department of our size and operating as we do with our staffing should have at least one frontline ambulance, because we're an ALS service, one frontline engine, one frontline area ladder, and preferably one spare frontline piece that can either fill in when one or two of the other vehicles are out for maintenance or if they're damaged in an accident or something to that degree. We do have a need for a 100-foot area ladder, solidified by the large number of multi-story single-family residents set back from the roadway and proposed new construction, specifically cell signaling, and if we were to consider the 40B project. With our staffing moving forward with 4 firefighters, we'd be able to respond to calls with both our engine and our ladder, increasing our efficiency on scene with manpower and equipment. Just to recall that the delivery time for a new fire vehicle is from 24 months to 48 months if we order it today. And the price increases have not stopped. They're averaging to 18 to 30% more per year. And the example I used was from one of the dealers, from one of the neighboring towns who bought an engine 2 years ago for $720,000 and just ordered it last month, the exact same engine, and is now $900,000. And one vendor I talked to, the ladder truck was expecting a 6% price increase in April, another 6% in June, and another in September. And no one's predicting that this price increase will stop anytime in the near future. There's a potential to sell Squad 3, as we've discussed several times. The broker has offered us $175,000. There's a local Massachusetts fire department that also has expressed interest in purchasing the vehicle in that price. They were actually back in my office again on Friday. They're very eager to go on it. They have the cash in hand, and they would love to buy it from us. Ladder 2 we had evaluated 3 or 4 months ago. Fire apparatus broker valued it at $50,000. We never heard back from the second broker. However, if we were to sell it outright, I'm aware of other departments out of state that would still get the benefit from the low miles and the ability for that truck. I estimate around $125,000 we'd be able to get for it if we sold it direct as opposed to going through a broker.
Is the ladder?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Originally, I was looking at a new midship mount 70-foot aerial platform, which was $1.1 million stripped and empty. However, the 100-foot units, which we feel we need, are in the $1.5 million range to start. And it costs around $25,000 in hose, tools, nozzles, and equipment to outfit the truck when it comes. And the reason why that's important is because some of our trucks have never had new equipment. Most of the equipment on the ladder came from the previous ladder, so it's 20, 25 years old, and it was 15 to 20 years old when it was transferred over. There are demonstrator or spec model trucks coming available soon. Engines can range from $500,000 and up, while aerial ladders start around the $850,000. And it varies based on the dealers and the manufacturers. And there are some newer engines out there that are being brokered from small departments with low miles that are maybe 2 or 3 years old as opposed to 20 years old, that can be purchased for significantly less, but you probably wouldn't get the full 20 or 25 years out of them. You would just be able to get them sooner. So the way to generate some revenue, still attempting to dispose of ambulance 2. At the time we were negotiating with, when we put it out for bid, it was $3,500. We didn't get any. Time has passed almost a year now, and the latest offer from Greenwood is $2,000 for the ambulance. So they would be interested in either purchasing it from us or giving us $2,000 worth of credit towards any maintenance or repairs on any of our vehicles. Selling Squad 3, we'd be able to get $175,000. And if, again, private purchase or private sale for ladder 2, I believe up to $125,000 is a reasonable price that we would be able to get. So if that goal were to be to sell those and return the funds to the fire apparatus fund, we'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of $228,000, $303,000. So these are 3 of the options that I proposed. As you can see, they all involve selling Squad 3 and selling the ladder. It's just how we replace it is primarily the unknown factor or what needs to be determined. So these are the projections that I send out to you folks, and I apologize, I did add in the light blue because I know there was a request to highlight the year that the vehicle actually showed up, and that was the Excel sheet I could not get to today. However, if you, the red shows the year that we would be making the order or the purchase. The yellow shows when that vehicle should really be in reserve status and not running front line, which means it should have already been replaced. and the current vehicle would be a backup vehicle. But for the top 3 vehicles, the second yellow box to the right would be the same year that the ordered fire apparatus would actually be appearing with a 2-year wait. So with engine 1 needing to be replaced in 2031, we need to order it in 2029. And it would arrive 2 years later. So 2 blocks to the right of all the red would be when they would be showing up. And I would estimate the same for the pickup trucks and for the command vehicle as well, even though they're more commercial vehicles. Worst case scenario would be 2 years out, because sometimes you can't get model years, or they get scooped up to be turned into ambulances, and then the chassis aren't available. So I have more information about an aerial ladder replacement, but I think that's a good place to start if you have any questions to this point.
So just, if I understand the charts correctly, the ladder is what we have to make for immediate decision, what do we do?
Yes,
And then the other apparatus, looks like the next purchase or discussion would be for fiscal year '26
right,
So we
that would
gotta-
be for the ambulance.
Okay. for the ambulance.
Yes,
So right now, if we deal with a ladder, and we should be good for a couple of years?
and the way I arrived at this chart, just so you know, the required capital investment, I took what we would need at the time of purchase and divided it up all the
Right.
years leading up to that
Yep,
purchase.
no, that's awesome. So what is the balance in the apparatus fund right now, Greg?
1.3-ish.
So we've got 1.3
Yeah, I think
right
it's 1.115, and then the 250 going in would make
250
it
we've already added.
1,365.
250 what, for
250 this-
fiscal next
this-
year?
No, what we did in this town meeting.
Oh,
That was
Added
just
it
that.
in, so it's 1,365. Current.
Okay, I realize this is, you're labeling this as FY '24, when we need to buy an engine. We can't spend the money, we believe we can't spend the money in the engine fund without a town meeting vote.
Correct.
So I think you're actually kind of a year, unless we wanna,
Unless you do it at the fall special.
Right.
Or, I mean, if we're having a June special, you could even do it then.
We're gonna have to, right, we're gonna have to,
Right.
so. Question, the deposit for this type of vehicle would be,
Well, I talked, one of the gentlemen, one of the firefighters has been running the 2 groups we have that are speccing out fire apparatus, and he's made contact with a lot of the dealers. The dealers said that for a $1.5 million ladder truck, if we had the money at the time of ordering, we could likely get anywhere from a $200,000 to $300,000 discount. We could get a better price on the actual truck if we had the money at the time of ordering.
okay, but what would we actually have to put down as a deposit? Is it?
That's gonna depend on, we don't have any real contracts or quotes from that, and that depends on the different vendors.
I just wasn't sure
So-
what was customary. for
Yeah,
that.
it varies.
Okay.
And the good thing with locking in, you're gonna get in that rate, and then they're not gonna be able to increase it on you, which is the benefit to having it.
the chart is fascinating, but do you have any factor, you've said that the prices are going up, and yet everything stays flat, I don't understand.
Well, that was based on some of the ones, because I don't know it all depends on the make and model. I don't know whether I sent this out to you, I think I sent it to Greg, but the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts has a cooperative purchasing program. So they get the stock price, it's a state bid list.
Yeah.
And it just depends on the different manufacturers as to,
I think what you're getting is the time value of money.
No,
Type
I'm
of-
not getting
no.
at the, not, that's not exactly what I'm
Okay,
getting at.
okay.
What I'm getting at is, we have, for example, this goes out to FY '43.
Right.
And I'm sure that the prices are going to go up. And we should be planning to spend more, put more money in
Yes.
ahead of time.
So
If you look
the way
at-
I
so
read-
If you look at
Yeah,
the
okay.
price of the ladder replacement 20 years out from now.
It's
Okay.
2.5 million in
you've got it at
2041.
2.5
Yes.
instead of 1.5.
But
Obviously, that's a guess.
in 2030, which is the last plausible date in, we just, thinking about what we're going to be doing in 2040 seems,
No, but this is good. I mean, we asked them to look ahead and I'd like the chart a lot. And what I think though is it's good information for perhaps the finance committee to, you know, help apply the
Whatever
time
assumptions
value
you want to use.
assumptions
Mhm.
as to how much cost will increase, time value of money and all that stuff. But
Right.
they could take this or even Andrea, you know, could take this and I think it would be very helpful information. I guess, the question I have is, tonight, are we having a conversation about deciding what to do about the ladder truck?
It'd
Is
be
that what we
helpful if-
expect to get out of this
Yes.
meeting tonight?
To me, that's the priority,
Okay.
making a decision. And I think the chief would agree.
Yeah, the ladder truck's priority and doing something with the squad
Sell,
is,
what to sell.
Yes.
So what to sell and
What's the,
what do we do about the ladder truck?
Yes.
That's what we need to get
yeah,
done tonight.
what do we need to
Okay.
sell first, and then what are we gonna buy to replace it?
For everything on this grid, we must be running a little bit behind. The capital investment per year is always a little bit more for your purchase, and then after that, the number goes down. For every single one of these. Because we're not keeping up with whatever the capital
Yes.
needs are for all of this. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's where my thinking is on the ladder truck, because I'm looking at that, and by the way, I am interested in data, how many calls that ladder truck has been out, say, in the past 3 or 4 years.
Well,
I know the last 8 months, it
so-
hasn't been anywhere.
So I went back and I did some research, and like anything, there's good data in there and there's bad data.
Yeah.
So the ladder truck hasn't run for 9 months, because it's been out of service. For the last year and 3 months before that, we had a call force that wasn't coming back to calls, and we had firefighters not coming back for calls. So with the ladder truck running additional, the amount of time it ran during those periods were minimal. The only times it did run were reported animals stuck in the tree, chimney fires, and specialized rescues. And that's because with 3 people,
That's all you could do.
that's all we could do. We could take one truck or the other. And when the engine goes to most of it and no one's coming back to take the second truck, that's why I mentioned at the beginning, with our staffing going up to 4, we're able to take both trucks. So the ladder truck's going to get used at a regular response to a house fire or a fire alarm activation now, where it hasn't been because we didn't have the staffing to do that.
Yeah, and I guess it goes out, my question is, so how many of those calls did it go out that really, it was equipment that needed to go on that call? Now, if it was a tall tree and there's an animal up the tree, I guess I could understand that.
That could be, that could come from elsewhere, that is
Yeah.
not a time priority.
No, it's not, but if, it's part of the area ladder replacement program that I have here, I answer some of those.
Okay, well, here's my
Question.
thinking, whether there's a ladder truck or not, there has to be a vehicle in that slot. Otherwise, you got one pumper and that's it. Squad is gone, ambulance is gone, you got $300,000 for that, so you got some money. So the question is do you fill that slot with another pumper, because we just don't have a lot of high stuff, or do you get a ladder truck? So the cost on that slot is not 1.5 million, it's a difference between 1.5 million and a pumper, which is like, well, I don't know the number here, 600,000 today?
It's more, no, according to these sheets, it's more like 750.
Would that be,
So it's
I
not-
well, I see 900 in 2029, maybe today it's 750.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the differential I'm looking at, that I'm saying, is this worth it to us?
So as we look at determining what we need, historical information is really helpful. However, given the lead times on these equipment, we do want to plan for the future.
Yeah.
And so I do think, taking into account the cell signaling complex and the likelihood of that big apartment building on Shingle Hill becoming a reality, I think we've got to figure that into the equation.
Yeah.
But also, if we decide we do need a ladder truck for those reasons or for the big homes we keep building, must it be new, or what is the likelihood of getting something that's 5 years old, you know, or demo,
Yeah.
whatever you, so those were my thoughts running through my
Yep, those are
head.
definitely options. And if, maybe it'll answer some questions if I run through this ladder presentation really quick, so you can, it'll explain some differences if I can get back up on the screen. So, the aerial ladder we're talking about is called the Quint. It has a pump and a tank like a pumper, and it also has an aerial ladder on it. So it's a dual function. So currently our ladder 2 is a Quint, which means previously anytime engine 1 was broken or out for repairs, we could run the ladder in its place because it still has water and hoses, and that's what we'd be looking to replace. So there's 2 different types. The top 2 are called an aerial platform. It's an aerial ladder with a bucket on the end. The 2 bottom ones is a different style that's called a straight stick or a straight aerial ladder. And as you can see, the 2 on the bottom, one has a single rear axle and one has a double rear axle. The aerial, and they have different functions. The aerial platform gives you a much more stable platform to work off of in the bucket. When you're venting a roof, whether you're making a rescue, whether you're doing something over an embankment, it's much more versatile for an aerial platform than it is for the straight aerial ladder. But those are the types that are out there. And all 4 trucks pictured are Quints right there.
And what's the variability in cost for them in general?
They can run right around the same.
Oh, they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah. Another consideration, as you can see in all these, is the jack spread or the jack situation. And these are the stabilizers that keep the truck from tipping over. So the 2 up on the left are what they call A or angled. They come out from underneath to the side, and then you see some of the other ones that are more square. They come out and drop straight down. In the lower left, they have the ability to pick the truck right up off the ground for complete stabilization and doesn't rely anything on the wheels. You can walk under those. They're that safe. So that's another consideration as to widths of streets, parked cars. The 2 on the upper left, you'll see in a lot of the inner cities because they can go under parked cars and still stabilize. The bigger ones are when you have a little bit more room because the jack spread comes out farther, and if there's a car parked there, there's going to be a problem. And that does happen. Some statistics, new homes are almost 30% larger than was being built prior to 2009. And if you consider we bought the aerial ladder in 2001, and you folks know the large number of mansions here in town currently. Typical 2015 construction, 3 stories, 2,400 square feet. Nobody's building 1,200 square foot ranches. The ISO rating, which affects the fire insurance rating, they say response areas with 5 buildings that are 3 stories or 35 feet or more, or have 5 buildings that have a fire flow greater than 3,500, should have a ladder truck. So this lends to the credibility of getting a ladder truck instead of a second pumper. And to receive the highest points in that evaluation, the ladder must reach the roof of the tallest building in its service area or be 100 foot long. And what we're looking is to reach the tallest buildings, which will likely be cell signaling and or the 40B. And all the ones we're currently looking at are 100 foot, so they meet it either way. And they help meet the need of where we're going. There's just a little thing about what we use the ladder truck for. Lightweight truss roofs, which is primarily all the new construction, all the manufactured lumber, are failing a lot quicker, and that's why we need this stable platform. We don't want to be up on the roof on ground ladders. NFPA Fire Protection Handbook, these are the recommended of what you should respond to these different types of occupancies with. as far as the number of apparatus. Now, we don't have a hospital, nursing home, or a high-rise yet, we do have a school. They recommend 4 pumpers, 2 ladders, medium hazard, apartments, offices, mercantile, which we do have, 3 pumpers, 1 ladder, and low hazard, 1, 2, or 3 family dwellings, at least 2 pumpers and 1 ladder truck. Some of this we currently make up by mutual aid response. But this is what the recommended are for those types of buildings. And if we're able to get a pumper and a ladder there ourselves, we're getting it there that much quicker and getting it into operation that much sooner rather than waiting for mutual aid. Another consideration with the ladder truck, older homes with limited access. Some of you folks know this. Long winding driveways with trees, the ones set up on hills, the ones that have the circular driveways in front, but the house is 300 yards back. And some that have access issues because the back of the house is actually on the water and we can't even get to it. Expansive roofs with multiple pitches. Again, you brought up the number of feet of the ground ladders on the engine. That's good for about the 2nd floor of a single-family colonial. Anything above that, we can't hit with ground ladders unless we have 3 or 4 people raising the ladders and the ladder truck is there. And it takes 1 firefighter to operate and position the aerial ladder. So you don't need 3 firefighters putting up a ground ladder. He can set up the truck and use the aerial ladder by himself to set it in place. Extremely multi-story homes, 3, 4, and 5 stories, and those are single families. Limited access in the winter, unplowed driveways and built up snowbanks, can't get the trucks close enough. Some of the mutual aid ladders from communities, depending upon the volunteers, so not only is it a 15-minute response once they're on the road, but it may be 10 minutes before they have a crew to respond in it. Now we're talking the ladder trucks not getting there for 20 or 25 minutes. We talked about the new proposed commercial and residential construction in excess of 70 feet. And again, this ladder truck is both a pumper and an aerial ladder. Some of the justifications. Access on the left, 3rd floor. Our engine does not have a ladder on it with a crew of 3 that will reach that 3rd floor. As you can see, there's no driveway for the top row middle, the duplexes. The other one's on a hill, no real access. We ran into that at the fire at Old Essex Road. The size of some of these houses, being able to access in the middle bottom a chimney from the driveway or from the street based on the layout of the house. Houses on the top are not unfamiliar here. A lot of different pitches on that roof. And how do we get up there? The one on the right resembles the one on Old Essex Road, almost to a T. And this is why we need the aerial ladder, because you're not going to get a ground ladder anywhere near that, or you're going to need so much manpower to do it, you'll never reach it. And that's the benefit of an aerial ladder. Thank you.
I wish we had a lot more of that material in our packets. There's an awful lot to swallow.
I'll be happy to resend it to you, but again, this has been a work in progress, so as I've been able to get new information.
What was sent, what I got, was 3 pages. of
Yeah,
chart.
we got 3 pages.
The charts, we just got the charts.
We got the
And,
spreadsheet.
You've got the equipment, the actual.
I thought I had sent the whole presentation.
They've been in previous packages.
Okay,
Wow,
I knew I had sent it, so,
this is new stuff, I don't think
I-
that's.
I've
No.
never seen-
not all of this, no, the last whole pack about the ladder justification has just come to fruition
I recall
because of the question about the current aerial ladder.
Well, this is available, this presentation. is-
Yeah, oh yeah, I can email it to
Okay,
you.
that's good.
Yep.
And I would
not a
like
problem.
that supplemented with just some comments about the last, well, you've been here 3 years, but I don't know, maybe there's information, say 5 years, on ladder usage. I just want to kind of know what the story is.
Based on how our software is, it's not tracked very well. I did
Okay.
go back several years,
Okay.
because I knew that was the request. but there was not much in there to verify it one way or the other, unfortunately.
No, I think that's important. I'm trying to wrap my head, and I don't like John, trying to justify $1.5 million for, something that is used occasionally and we can't remember when we've used it in the past.
Well,
I would think that, no, just my point.
yeah,
We had used in your package in your presentation to FinCom, the joint board, you had 1,425 calls, of which 18 were fires.
Yep.
Okay, and I believe 10 were structures.
Yep.
Okay,
that sounds
I
about
would
right.
think that with only 10 fire structures, one would remember which one required a ladder.
Well, this is.
Okay? You know, by saying that, oh my, we needed this ladder, okay?
Right.
You may have used a ladder, but was it required, I guess is the point.
Right, well, if you remember, we don't necessarily base, we base what we need on the potential of needing something.
Okay.
And with the increased staffing, it will be running on every call the engine goes on. It will be running on motor vehicle accidents on the highway with the vehicle extrication equipment to better block the roadway than the engine can to give us highway safety. Plus, we'll be able to get it and deploy it at more fires because it's actually on the road. As you see what I mentioned this before, what the other communities run, it goes every time an engine goes. Every time there's a fire alarm activation, it's thought of that could be a potential fire. Right now, we have enough staffing to bring the engine. When we're up to full staffing, we'll be able to bring the engine and the ladder. And it gets it there sooner to get it into position in the event that we need it.
And just one other question, and then,
Sure.
sorry, is, Gloucester, Beverly, do they both have ladders?
Yes.
Okay, so our direct neighbor to the north and our direct neighbor to the south,
Right,
okay, we have ladders, okay.
right. But I will point out, Gloucester's ladder is coming from the central fire station,
Okay,
all the way and down the center of Gloucester,
Mhm.
and the same for Beverly's.
Okay.
It's coming all the way from the upper end of Hale Street by Cabot Street.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
I hear the conversation and agree with you that in today's world, I'm not 100% convinced we need a ladder. However, in tomorrow's world, I think we do. Because of cell signaling, because of the potential for adding elderly housing, which we have talked about as part of the zoning changes, that I imagine something is going to go through regarding elderly housing. So I just feel like we need to think a few years out. And when I do that, I think we're going to need it. I'm not clear on exactly when. And I would like to avoid paying, 1.5 million. That's why I'm trying to understand, if we sell the one we've got, someone wants it, get the money for it, right? That's kind of a no-brainer. We've got some sitting in the garage we can't use and we can get some money for.
I don't
To
disagree
me,
with
that is
that
a
at all.
no-brainer decision we should talk about tonight.
To that point.
But
yeah.
just on that, and that lowers the cost of getting a replacement ladder, which might be slightly used as opposed to brand spanking new. We probably don't need a brand spanking new, but is there an opportunity to get something? That also lowers the cost. So I think we could get a ladder truck for less than 1.5 that services.
You
I
can't,
agree.
Will need.
yeah, you can't use that ladder truck at all. I mean, everything functions on it.
Yep.
It just
Nope.
doesn't.
It's got
So-
value in other states.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Value enough
So
that
in
we can
in
get some
effect, your
money for that.
backup pumper is the squad car.
No, we don't
Get some
even
money
use
for
that. We have, our backup pumper right now is a reserve engine from Boston that Beverly borrowed for the past year, that we borrowed from Beverly, and it's sitting next to the fire station. So if when engine one went out of service, the Boston engine goes in
That's my
service.
question. Yeah, you've got to have two pumpers that are kind of functional at all times.
Well,
so you
either
just
two
don't know.
pumpers that are functional or a Quint aerial ladder that
Yeah,
can
that's
take the
right.
place.
Two things that can pump water.
Yep,
Yes,
exactly,
So,
yes.
exactly.
yeah, all right. And so we've had this rental or borrow deal for months.
Yes, because we've had the Boston piece, and before that, we had the engine from Linfield until they needed it back.
Okay, I understand
Is
these
this uncommon?
things.
They're
You know,
borrowing from the different,
No.
Is there more borrowing going
Don't
on
know
now
about
than historically?
Well, part of the reason more is going on now is because the waits for trucks.
Right.
Because people have trucks going out of service, or they're ordering them, and then their other truck breaks, and now they have nothing, and their replacement truck's 2 years out. So there's a
That's
lot of that going
so
on.
this is not uncommon what we're doing right now.
No,
Okay.
no. And we wouldn't have gotten it because Beverly's had borrowed it for the past year, because they were waiting for their new engine to come in. So, yeah, it's,
All right, well,
thankfully, there's a good network.
I'm just wrestling with the cost differential here. A ladder cost us $1,000 a week. If you just do the math on 1.5 million, over 20 years, it's $1,000. And a pumper costs $600. And that's the differential, because you gotta have some vehicle there, whether it's a pumper or a ladder, you gotta have something there. So it's not the whole 1.5 million, it's something less than that.
Yep.
And so I'm just kind of getting my
So if we
head
could close
around
that
it.
gap, if we could close that gap.
However, if you look at it,
Sell ladder too.
as much as they're both pumpers, the engine cannot replace the aerial ladder.
No,
Because
no,
that has
I
specific
agree.
functions, it has rescue functions, and that's how we look at it. It's a different specialized tool that helps us to do our job.
I could wrap my head around 1.1, 1.2. Okay, I don't know what the number is, I don't know why the 1.5 is.
Well, I can show you,
No, I'm just saying, this is just.
Oh, no, but like, right here, you want real numbers, like a mid-range 102-foot rear mount platform is 1.553. If you wanted 1.1, you get a 79-foot aerial ladder.
According to NFPA, they want us 100.
100. That's what we're gonna need to base, because a 79-footer won't get us to the top of the new cell signaling building.
So what about demos or used?
Right, that's
That's right.
Yeah, that's what we have to look for. I mean, we're waiting, we have a demo coming, on the 24th. It's a Sutphen, it's already purchased, but that will show us, that's a good visual of what an aerial platform is and what it does.
So the likelihood of finding an appropriate vehicle that's not brand new.
Yeah, there'll be some spec trucks out there, they're just not in yet. The vendors are waiting for the trucks.
what is your best guess as to the timeline as to when you?
They have no guess. They're still waiting from the manufacturers. They're on order and
So what if
could be 2 months, could be 6 months.
So
Less
what-
than 2 years, which is what we are looking
Right.
at for new.
Yep,
Listening
Yep.
to you and thinking, okay, we spent we put aside the 1.5, and we don't get anything for 2 years, and you've made a very good case that it's something that we need to have. I just don't, find something used, find a demo, find something so that we have a truck
Is that
sooner
critical?
rather than later.
Yes. So what about this? What if we, from a logistics standpoint, we could vote tonight to sell ladder 2, which is sitting useless in our garage right now. We can get some real money for that. We could take some sort of a vote to put forward a warrant on the next town meeting for an appropriation of a either new or used ladder truck, like we did with the ambulance, right? We weren't committing to buy something new,
Up to,
but it was just a not to
Mhm.
exceed, right? Is there anything else?
There's only one question to, little, whatever happened, whatever happened to the transport idea of taking, was
We'll
it
take
this-
ambulance 2 and turn it into a,
no,
No,
taking engine 1.
Engine.
yeah, that's still in
That's
process.
still in play. We
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
see
yeah,
that.
no, that's just putting it's taking 2 air pack seats out of engine 1 and
What's
putting it in
what's the
cabin.
status of that?
Still getting bids
Okay.
on the different types of
I
cabinets,
was,
so
okay, so what?
we've sent the dimensions into a couple builders, and whether they are going to install it or we're gonna install it ourselves is the second half of the equation.
so I make a motion to sell ladder 2.
Engine.
I'm sorry, I thought it was ladder
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 two.
two.
Ladder 2 and squad 3.
ladder 2 and squad 3.
Okay.
Second.
Both of them in one shot here.
What's the value of keeping squad 3?
Is that that's a second pumper, or you never valued it as a pumper?
No, we don't, right now, it's a chase vehicle for the ambulance.
All right, then, yeah, that's history.
We don't need that for advanced life support, we can't suit that, squad 3?
No, because we're gonna make engine one the advanced life support
Advanced.
engine.
The engine has more room to carry the needed equipment.
All right, so I move to sell ladder 2 and squad 3.
Okay, I second that. 3 strikes, you're out with the ladder. You haven't passed for what, a third time, right?
It's like fourth
Fifth
time.
time.
For the 5th time, that
Yeah,
thing's
whatever.
just-
I've lost track unfortunately.
I assume there's no way to do a complete, engine and replacement,
For the ladder,
yeah.
you could.
But it's-
However, it's the aerial ladder component and all the other components that are gonna age out in 2 years
Okay.
anyway, and it would have, so if you spent $100,000 for a new motor now, we wouldn't be using it 2 more years from now because it'd be the aerial ladder component, the hydraulics, the jacks, and it would have to be almost a total rebuild.
About the same price though as a new one on a yearly basis, the 50,000 a year.
Yeah. 1,000 a week.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion?
Could I just ask a question with respect to that? Would you need to vote to have that money go back into the fire apparatus fund as opposed to going into the general fund, or does that require a vote at town meeting?
That's a town meeting vote.
Can this all be done in June? Whatever's gonna happen with the school deal?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And, but also we would have to have a vote on getting a ladder.
Yes,
Okay, all, that can all be done one shot.
yes.
Okay, or separate articles or whatever.
And how much money do we wanna spend?
Well, I don't think we need, I think we have plenty of time to talk about this. Maybe we could have a discussion at the next select board meeting on wording for the next town meeting.
And if you could get a sense of what's out there.
But in the meantime, we've got stuff sitting around,
Let's hear it.
it's just gonna rust, and the longer it sits there, the less money we'll get for it, so we
This
can
is
sell
very
it.
true.
Let's get
They're
some
both very
money.
viable trucks to somebody else right now,
Somebody,
so.
we can help somebody else. So I would just say separate the 2 conversations. Our next conversation could be about what to buy and how to phrase the stuff in the town meeting tonight.
Tonight, we are moving
Moving to sell.
sell 2 vehicles.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? John,
Yes?
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
yes.
Thank you. That was a-
Should you have put the ambulance in that? Or is that a rounding error?
So, well, you've already approved.
We already approved
We already
Oh,
that.
that
approved
was
that.
approved.
I think we
Yeah.
approved
Yeah, I
that.
think we did that.
So
Have to
basically,
cross Ts and dot Is.
I have to go out of business.
All right.
Or fire sale. is-
Fire sale,
Fire
exactly.
sale.
Bring
Okay.
back building
No,
19.
not- Now you
Okay, so
gotta
the
look for
action is
ladder
for the
deals.
next meeting
Yes.
to have that future-oriented wording for what we think we want to do at the next town meeting. Okay.
Okay, that's vehicle replacement. Now we talk about staffing.
Okay.
And I'd still like the presentation.
Oh, certainly,
yes,
yep, nope,
please,
that's
yes.
on my list.
And the ladder summary,
You'll,
just for
you'll all get it.
edification.
I will make sure you get that.
Okay, staffing them.
With respect to staffing, firefighter Doobie and firefighter Peters started the fire academy May 1st. So they will be graduating July 14th. Our newest to be hired, Shane Stevenson, he will be starting on June 11th. He will be testing for his paramedic in July, and hopefully will get certified as a paramedic in July, and he's slated to go to the fire academy in August, from August 8th to November 11th.
So we hired somebody who's either a paramedic or a firefighter?
Because he's 85% through paramedic school. And he will be completed, and he came highly recommended. He scored top on our assessment panel, and 4 of our current firefighter paramedics have all worked with him in the EMS field and have
Okay.
given him great recommendations for his skills. He's worked in another very busy system. So he should have no problem passing his paramedic. And then there are 2 conditional offers out there right now. They came back, they both accepted the job. These are for the 2 new positions after July 1. One is a paramedic, the other one is a firefighter 1-2 call volley academy EMT. They're already in the process of scheduling their NFPA physicals, and then they will take the physical agility test. Once I have that paperwork, I can schedule them for the academy. So likely if they were both, or one or both of them were to go to the full-time academy, it would probably be in the fall. Probably October, November, which would put them back on shift December or January, and that would bring us up to 4 shifts at 4. Now, one of them is a firefighter 1, firefighter 2, so after he does his 2 or 3 weeks of daytime orientation, he can immediately go into the rotation and work because he has the fire certification. He will still need to get his paramedic certification. In the event he can't get into paramedic school until the spring or next summer, depending upon how busy the schools are, then he'll be sent to the fire academy before he goes to paramedic school because he can't do both at the same time. If he were able to get into paramedic school in January, we would forego the fire academy until he finished paramedic school and then send him to the fire academy. Because he can't miss any days of paramedic school and he can't miss any days of the fire academy, and they can't run at the same time. But he will be able to go into the rotation, so he will not cause overtime. He won't be a trainee other than the 2 weeks that, 2 or 3 weeks that he's doing the in-house orientation. So there is some flexibility with him.
When he's in paramedic school, he can still do his shifts.
Yes, yes. Yeah, he'll still be able to work on shift while he's in paramedic school as long as the day, his shift doesn't conflict with the day, and then he'll just be off that day and just assigned a different day.
So actually, it would be best to hold off on his fire academy until we have all the others back from academy.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll see, because I don't know when the others are going to completely come back, because I don't know when the other paramedic is going to be graduating from the academy. I may be able to get him into a summer academy, so. But he's variable on that, so we have some flexibility with him.
So the challenge is those first couple of weeks in July.
Yes.
Right, so it's hard, it's impossible to keep 3 on without having overtime.
Overtime. It's going to be, yes.
So we didn't budget very much overtime for next year with the assumption that we would have the staffing to backfill.
But there's already more vacation on the books for July than there is for June right now.
So any takers on switching some vacation time?
Not as of yet.
So we're gonna run into the same problem in terms of burning through overtime real fast unless we are okay with going down to 2 in those first 2 weeks.
So I'm not okay with going down to 2 during what I would call our busy season. If it was the dead of winter, with the brush fires we've already had in the area, and that being July 4th week, that's what's making me really uncomfortable. If we were talking about a different time of year, I think I could be comfortable, but I'm not, I don't know.
And I know that
That's
tends
just
to
me.
be the biggest hit on the police department overtime as well, starting the year, is the first week or so of July.
So do we have the finance committee to
Was
give
that?
us some more money at the next town meeting?
You can.
I think the concern is we thought we would have fully trained firefighters, right?
And we've hired people who aren't.
So I guess we need to revisit, or I should say, I think we need a better understanding of why we are not hiring full-time firefighters. Personally, I need a better understanding of why we can't hire people who are fully trained when other towns seem to be able to do that.
That's not entirely correct.
Okay, it's not correct? Okay,
No.
so everybody's doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
There are people scrambling to hire people. I think Gloucester's had 4 openings now for 6 months that they haven't been able to hire for.
What were you gonna do? I mean, July 4th is a busy time. And how is the staffing gonna work on that day anyway with just 2 guys? I mean, doesn't somebody have to be well, somebody's gonna be in the parade, I guess, but, you know, there are firework events, I don't know. what
No
the
fireworks
No,
this
no
year.
fireworks
Alright,
this
so that's
year.
not-
Oh, if it was fireworks this year, it would be,
No vacations.
we'd be calling in outside
Yeah,
fire
yes.
departments for that like
Yeah,
we did
okay.
last time.
All right, so that's not,
No. And we don't have to staff the parade the same way the police does. It's just the on-duty staffing for the regular calls.
yeah.
There's increased boat traffic, we could end up on the boat. There's all kinds of different things that happen. The public safety boat, with all the extra boats out there in, you know, for water emergencies and things like that. We go on those for medical emergencies and stuff too. So that's just another realm of services we provide. So as much as there's foot traffic in town, there's boat traffic in town. So there's a lot of potential draw on emergency services, as Kathy pointed out.
July 4th is a Tuesday.
But once the 2 firefighters come back, June 14th, we'll have 4 shifts of 3 and a floater. So we'll be back to the floater helping to decrease any of the overtime at that point as well, which we haven't had for a while because of the 2 firefighters that left.
Greg, do you have any brilliant ideas? Because if we spend all of our overtime in the first 2 weeks of the fiscal year, if,
We won't spend all of it, but we're gonna go through a big chunk of it. So, you either drop down or we appropriate more dollars. Those are really your 2 choices.
What kind of dollars do you think we're talking about?
What kind of dollars? Well, minimum of 20.
I mean, 20,000, 20,
So those first 2 weeks.
We're looking at spending somewhere between 10, I think, and 10 and 15
For 2 weeks or per week?
for 2 weeks. And that's out of the 35.
So we can't use reserve to cover that?
Yes, you can.
We have plenty of reserves. We had that discussion.
but we can't spend that.
No, I know, but the finance committee.
Correct.
So is this worth a conversation, like you suggested, Ann, with the finance committee? If we give them direction that we prefer not to drop down the staffing? Or, you know, what would they recommend as far as plugging the financial hole?
I mean, you know, my sense would be that they would say, well, let's see how the rest of the year goes. But I think it's smart to have the conversation ahead of time.
Yeah, just give them a heads up, because we are talking about the next fiscal year, right? And we're not talking about overspending the entire budget, but you're spending it ahead of what we would plan. Just have that conversation.
When do they meet next?
Oops, sorry.
We need to reschedule because they were going to meet with you actually. That postponed that. But yes, we can get on, we'll coordinate and give us a meeting together with both boards.
And they had asked for a quarterly review of the overtime picture anyway, if I recall.
Yep.
Correct.
So this could be the first discussion.
Mhm.
What do we do? Because we're already, our hiring projections were off.
Do we have any further questions for Victor?
The only other thing I'd like to update you on is with respect to the public safety boat. I've been working with Bion. Bion was able to secure a grant for a marine fire pump. And the fire department has since bought the suction hoses, the hoses, and the monitor nozzle to go with it. And we're in the process of getting that pump installed on the safety boat. So we will actually have firefighting capabilities on the water or for residences that are close to the water that we can't normally reach from that side. So that will materialize along with some training over the summer, but it's getting ready to be installed very soon. So it was a pleasure working with him, and it's good that we can finally have something to protect the $20 million of floating assets. So kudos to Bion for doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. For flying.
No. Wants the truck.
Oh. Is that noisy?
Oh, my God.
The next, is a proposed flag policy. This is the first time I'm seeing this version of the flag policy. We discussed it a year ago, I guess, with a lot more, redundant information about how flags should be displayed, which is all covered with the various codes. The intention of this one is to give us coverage, in case some organization comes to us and says, we want our flag on your wall. And does the, town council have anything to say about this?
They thought it was, they didn't go into a deep review.
Yeah.
You know, preliminarily, they said, you know, you're heading in a good direction in terms of consistency with the Boston decision and having it as a, it's government speak, if you will, speech.
Speech and
Rather than just general public speech.
Mhm.
So that's the real distinction you want to make. You put up flags that you approve as official town actions. So requests come before you, and then we approve them based on that basis.
Mhm. And we have a general policy of having 2 readings of policies, but in the case of an emergency, we can get by with 1. And I am going to argue that this is, we need to have a policy in place when we put the pride flag up. And so I would like you to consider approving this today.
I think the policy was extremely well written, and I just think it was very well done, and I would be happy to get this done tonight.
I have a couple of caveats. So, you know, I spent some time on the internet looking around here, and there aren't very many towns that have flag policies subsequent to the Boston decision. There are only a handful out there that have done that. And the decisions to do that are pretty much split down the middle. I found several towns that say, we're not dealing with any flags. Just the US flag, that's it, and the POW flag. There were several towns, and just looking in Massachusetts, I looked elsewhere, but primarily Massachusetts, also a similar number that said yes. In other words, we'll put up commemorative flags. They weren't really very specific about it. And then there were a similar number of towns, and in all of these instances, about 4 or 5 towns in each one of these pots, that was said, yes, you'll put up a flag, but it has to go on a separate flagpole. We're not commingling it with US flags. And then there were a few towns that town managers, town administrators had sent notes to their council, their select board to say, you gotta deal with this. And these are notes that went April 26th, May 3rd, I mean the last 2 weeks. They're busy working on policies, but they don't have anything in place. And in all of those instances, the town managers said, I don't think we should have any flags anywhere, because it sucks up time, it's a little complex. My perspective is that the way this is written, I'm in general in favor of allowing outside groups. We've only had LGBTQ at this point, the pride flag. And in fact, that has been the driver for much of this in most towns. That's been the group. But everybody knows there are other groups that could perhaps approach. But I'm in favor of considering whatever groups may come down, whether they're event-driven or cause-driven, or they're just special groups, based on this government speech sort of thing. But I want a separate flagpole. We are in kind of a unique position in that our flagpole has more or less been adopted by the memorial that is out front. And there is one town in Massachusetts that had a similar kind of challenge and just said they've got a separate flagpole. And most towns do. And in fact, in Boston, there were 3 flagpoles that were out there. One had the state flag, the one had US flag, the one that was for the commemorative flags, and they had hundreds of those that went up over the years until this Christian group put up the flag. That went on a separate flagpole. There was no flagpole in Boston that had a US flag or a state flag and also the commemorative flags. It was a separate pole. So I would be in favor of modifying this a little bit, saying we put up another flagpole somewhere out here, and that would be available for commemorative flags. I think furthermore, we need to define what our flagpoles are in this town. We just say we've got flagpoles. I think we ought to say we've got one here, we've got one at Tux Point, we've got one at the fire station, and
We've got 5 or 6.
Have we got more than that?
We identified them last
I-
year.
We identified them, yes, and most of them are not lighted, and flags fly,
which is not right.
which is not right, and nobody cares. And the half-staff,
Are these like in cemeteries maybe?
the flagpole at Tux is not lighted, the flagpoles in the cemeteries are not lighted, to the best of my knowledge. The flags are flown at half-staff at the police station some days, and out in front other days, and there's no coordination. And that's not a happy situation, but there's nobody in town who is responsible, no employee who is responsible for this. Our previous policy said that the police chief would be responsible, but the Legion took over. And so,
Yeah, and so they deal with that. Somebody,
to their own rules.
So I think we need a policy, and the issue of how it is implemented and holding people accountable is a little bit different. I think that we should not have a policy that cannot be, where we can't hold someone accountable. So if there's some logistical reason why it just doesn't make sense to have a flagpole somewhere, and that's one discussion. But I think we need to set the policy, and Greg needs to assign an employee to deal with the flags, and then we hold that employee and Greg accountable. I feel like they're different, slightly different. I don't want that accountability issue to get in the way of us having a good policy, I guess.
I guess what I would argue at the moment, I understand the desire for a second flagpole. I think if we had a second flagpole, then we could modify policy. But I think, given that we have agreed to have a commemorative flag starting for the month of June, we ought to have a policy that fits with our current equipment.
Then we can modify the policy going forward.
If, going
Yes.
forward,
Yes.
if we have another poll, then we can modify the policy.
We're gonna put that on the agenda now.
Well, we should take an action to,
Find another poll.
You know,
Discuss.
I mean,
to discuss what are the polls we want to have, and, because maybe there's some we don't want anymore if they're not being properly maintained, properly, you know. So I think the discussion of what polls we have or should have
Mhm.
should be a separate discussion, and we could take an action to put that. That's,
Okay.
does that make sense?
And in the interim,
And in the interim, we fix this policy.
This policy, I think this policy as written
gets us through,
gets us through the next year or so, and we can, someone can fix it.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so, okay, unfortunately, the suggestion is that Mr. Rao propose something that he doesn't approve of.
yeah, but I want something more solid than just, we'll do it some point in the future. That's not good enough for me. And I'm just trying to figure out how to, I mean, maybe there has to be a phrase that, you know, that commemorative flags will be flown at the current until such time as another
Okay.
flagpole is
So
put up.
we can amend this policy at a time, right?
Yeah, like now.
Well, we can adopt the policy as written, then the action committee will discuss what we're going to, the action,
Well, see, that's not good enough for me.
Okay,
I want to see something in writing right
in
now.
that case,
So-
is there
Greg
someone
had an
else who
idea.
would like to make a motion?
Well,
Specific.
Greg had a,
Well, I was gonna suggest you approve the policy basically as written now and have a second motion that says, instructing me through staff to erect a new pole over the next few months.
Okay,
and at such
With a
time,
timeline on it.
yeah, yeah.
If that's the direction
Yeah.
you're gonna go, then, you know, it's,
That would be okay. That would be okay. If we can do that. I mean, it's good to find some spot out here on the common, I think that.
yeah, delegate staff to work with John to pick a spot for a new flag.
Fine. Well, I would defer to the DPW or somebody to
No,
say
no, I
this is what-
understand.
this is what makes sense. But I think that would be okay with me. I'm just looking for other notes here. Because some of this stuff you've taken from Oregon's,
So, most
or
of this came
Oregon's
from,
assumption, or template.
most of this came from Hamilton, Massachusetts.
Well, they had taken it from Oregon's template.
I move that the select board adopt the flag policy after review on May 15th, 2023 as written.
second.
Is there further discussion? John,
Yes,
Brian,
Yes,
Catherine,
Yes.
I vote yes. Now.
and now I would like to
second-
make a motion, okay? That the town administrator arrange to erect a second flagpole somewhere on the town common for the purpose of flying commemorative flags. In fact, most of these flagpoles that are second poles, the town flag was on them, and then commemorative flags are on them. We've got a town flag, right? It's essentially got the seal, I guess, or something like that.
we can get one.
No, I don't.
Is there
That's not critical.
Is there a second?
Second,
Friendly amendment.
Sure.
So we were instructing the town administrator to erect you said second flagpole on the town
Well, let's just,
common.
okay, perhaps I shouldn't say second, a flag.
if that pole does not fly the American flag, it has to be lower than the,
Which is a challenge, isn't it?
which is a challenge,
I-
isn't it?
I guess
Okay.
my friendly amendment is that I would like the town administrator to come back with a clear inventory of town-maintained flagpoles and a recommendation for where to erect a new flagpole for the purpose of hosting commemorative flags.
Are you suggesting it might be elsewhere? I don't think that would
No,
fly well.
but the part I want is the inventory,
Okay, that's,
because I don't like the fact that we could potentially add yet another asset to our responsibility that, again, we are not going to maintain. So I'm about the maintenance part.
well, this pole would kind of be right in your face there. It's not out of sight, out of forgotten, but,
Well, I don't know, I'm not sure we have a great track record
Yeah.
on that.
I don't even know.
And I think putting up a second low pole on the common is not going to improve the common. And I personally,
I just don't know where it would go.
I don't, it has, it.
That's why I asked for a recommendation,
Okay, so.
because there's a concern here, which I think is a valid concern. We're trying to cram a lot onto one flagpole, right? But we're not quite sure what to do. So I would like, that's why I phrased the way I did. I would like Greg and his team to come back with a recommendation for where we could locate something. Because I'm not, I agree, I'm not quite sure where to
I
put
don't
it.
think that counts as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so then
Because I
okay.
think John is trying to say, do it,
yeah, okay.
and you're trying to say, think about it.
I don't think the two are tightly related.
Okay.
I don't
And I
think
withdraw
they
my
are. It's
friendly
just,
amendment.
yeah.
Request.
But as a separate question, yeah, where are these other flagpoles and what's going on? That's
Well, that was
fair.
part of the, Debbie's.
That's correct.
Right.
Is there, I would like to put a time frame on this. Greg is, what, like 4 months or 5 months? I mean, it's not
It's fine,
super critical.
that'd be fine.
Fine,
Okay, would you restate your motion?
okay. A motion to request the town administrator to arrange to put up a, I will say, second flagpole somewhere on the common for the purpose of flying commemorative flags.
Yeah, I think it was seconded.
I did second it, I'm just wondering now.
Okay,
My concern is, to your point.
Yeah.
Where does it go and what does it do to detract from not crowded?
I could say subject to review, the location subject to review by the select board.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. There's a lot of thought that was put into the memorial. Okay, and
and something that,
you know, and to just try to stick something in there.
I'm not comfortable without a plan.
Yeah, so I'd like to, at least, I want site review.
Fine,
I don't disagree with you, by the way.
okay. Are you seconding John's motion or not?
I don't know, think about this, with a friendly amendment for site review.
yes, subject to
Subject
review
site
by
review. Yes,
the select.
Subject to slightly, okay,
Does that mean that if we don't like the solution, we say no? The way that is worded, or because the motion is to install something, it's gonna go somewhere?
and whether we like it or not. We could
That's
review
my
it,
question.
Yeah,
That's my question.
I defer
Should,
to,
it should go somewhere. In other words, if it's not there, it can go some other place there, but it should go up somewhere.
does it have to be
On the
somewhere in front of town hall?
Well, no, I think it has to be somewhere in the common vicinity, yes.
So are you seconding the motion?
No, I'm gonna withdraw my second because I wanna make sure that we have a site review and I'm not convinced that there's enough room in the common to put it. I do agree wholeheartedly that we should have a separate pole and that takes a lot of pressure off of a lot of other things we're doing. So I am in total agreement with the second pole. I just don't know where it's gonna go. And to second the motion as you put it, I can't.
Kathy?
I'm not gonna second that.
I'm not gonna second that.
I will make a motion, though, to request that Greg and his team come back to us with a recommendation for a location for a flagpole for the purpose of posting commemorative flags. Within a time frame, within the next quarter? Is that reasonable, Greg?
Is there a second for that?
I can live with that, I second that.
Is there further discussion? John?
I gotta go with what I got, yeah.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
No. So, okay, we've, that one out pretty clearly. The next one is more problematic, which is the appointments policy. And we adopted an appointments policy, and among the things that it said was that, members of committee appointees will be town residents unless there are special requirements for the position and no candidates are available. And we proceeded to appoint 2 non-residents to committees which don't have specific requirements and did have other candidates. The Harbor Committee and the DIP.
I know the dip.
Oh, yes,
Who's
yes.
on the harbor?
Who's the harbor?
Yeah, because Skip,
Where does
Oh,
the-
he does not live.
No,
No.
he lives in Essex.
but it's
As
his
does,
business.
as does the DIP who has.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
Jim
John
Brown.
Brown.
Jim Brown.
We
Jim
can
Brown.
call him a DIP, no.
Yeah. I didn't say that.
Okay. Yes. So, do we want to change the policy? Do we want to pretend that we're going to behave better in the future? That's one narrow part. The other is how we deal with people who are appointed to a committee and their appointment has come to an end. It has been our practice just to ask the individual and the committee chair whether that person wants to continue and whether the person in the committee chair is a contributing member. And then reappointing them without making an effort to find other. And I don't know what the select board wants to do
For both of those issues.
for the issue of and I've probably got some others
So-
here that I'm forgetting.
No, I'm,
There's some, so if we take one at a time.
yeah.
Sure.
So regarding the selection of the non-residents, I'm never in favor of having a policy that we just like break, right? So we found a real reason to appoint those 2 individuals. My belief is they were business owners.
The business
They're
related,
business owners.
in both
They're
instances.
both
In both
taxpayers.
instances, right?
Taxpayers.
Taxpayers. So I do think it makes sense to tweak the language a little bit to allow for non-resident taxpayers perhaps, or business owners to be appointed to committees. I'm flexible on what that would be, but I do think it's
I think the requirement would be,
Yeah.
a taxpayer.
taxpayer, yeah,
Taxpayer. So they have property.
yes,
They could have, not have a business owner who's renting space.
right.
See, some of these committees have people that have very specific descriptions associated with them. I know the Historic District Committee is,
Right,
that's the worst. Well, I mean, it's the most
They're very
specific,
specific,
you know, with most of the members there. And I would have no problem saying one of those slots on the harbor must be a harbor-related business owner. Because you want a business person on that. The fact that he or she doesn't live in Manchester is not the key criteria there.
Well,
That
even
they are.
downtown improvement, you can make the
And the
same
same
case,
thing.
that's a business area.
I think we covered that by saying they're taxpayers.
They're taxpayers, like you said, though, if they own the property, if they're just
Well,
renting.
because I think we have to be we have to tighten up a little bit. I think the taxpayers themselves would rather have a taxpayer representing them.
So would we say that for for those committees, there is one slot that must be reserved for a person of this profile?
That's not what my suggestion was. My suggestion was more allowing it to happen.
Well, the question
As
is,
opposed to just saying that you have to have somebody with those, because you could have a business owner who does live in Manchester, and that's
fine.
That's totally fine, right? Rather than specifically determining the makeup of those particular committees without consulting them, I would feel a little uncomfortable with that.
Well, see, they're just having a line and under the committees. In other words, the general guide would say that they must be residents except as designated in the descriptions for each of the committees. Because these committees have various slots
All
that,
30 of them.
no,
Only the ones that feel.
only the ones, and they're only a handful. There are only 3 or 4 committees where this person must be such and such. For the Historic Committee, one of these people has to be an architect, okay? In this instance, one of these people must be a business owner, okay? And we're not saying that they have to be,
Okay, for example, someone who has a legal practice in town, and lives elsewhere. Would that count as a business owner?
According to Brian's definition, no, if they're not a taxpayer.
So if they rent their building, then they
I want
can't.
them to-
If they own their building,
I think they have a more vested interest,
okay,
okay, if they're paying taxes. Just my,
Get more skin in the game.
okay. Someone who owns an apartment building,
what's the problem with it? Is a business owner, let's say, an absentee landlord if you want, I don't know. If they're paying taxes and they have a business and that's the criteria they're looking for, then I don't have a problem with that.
okay, so they have to have a business and be paying taxes. It's not enough just to
Right.
own property somewhere.
and
pay
rent it
taxes.
out to somebody else.
Or just, it's a woodlot.
I see where you're going here. I don't like it, but I see where you're going. To the point where we have 2 members, okay, Skip Crocker has property, okay, that's in the harbor.
Okay.
It makes perfect sense for him to be on the committee. We would want him to be on the committee, okay? Jim Brown his family represents a lot of property, okay? They both live in Essex. It makes perfect sense for him to be on the committee, okay? To this point, Mari, who lives in Essex, when she did live in Essex, okay, I'm sorry, but she has a business in town, okay? Although, actually, she rents, so she couldn't be on there. She's a renter, so she wouldn't be on their downtown improvement.
I think one thing to keep in mind, and maybe we can structure the language to include this, regarding the committees, maybe we limit the non-residents to advisory committees. Some boards and committees are decision-making committee boards, right? What we're talking about, they advise us. So I certainly think it's less risky to have a taxpayer non-resident on those committees. They're advising us, and we can choose to take their advice or not, you know.
Is that like ex officio or something like that?
I mean, we have very few boards that are decision-making bodies. The vast majority are advisory.
Okay. Taxpaying business owners on advisory boards. And we better come up with a list of what are the non,
We have that. Debbie has a database of boards and committees. That's part of what we've been doing. And we can, there's very few adjudicatory ones. There's like 7 or something.
okay, whatever, just because
I
I'm,
don't.
So the quasi judicial board, so
Yeah.
the planning board, the zoning
No,
board.
Board of Health,
Board of Health,
assessors,
Concom.
Board of Assessors.
assessors is.
I'm sorry, I'm not,
Yeah. Right.
registrars.
Okay,
It's a very small list.
Yeah.
but
Planning board, zoning board, conservation
The
commission.
historic district commission,
HGC,
you're making decisions on what they can build.
Board of Health, got 5.
okay,
Um,
what I'm asking for tonight is just directions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I will try to craft it, and maybe somebody could send me a list of the
Yeah,
boards
we could-
from which, foreigners are not invited.
allowed.
Just build a wall.
Just, oh gosh.
Okay, now, the first question I actually raised was, how do we fill seats that become vacant during the term of the appointment, which I believe was not addressed in the policy. And, I suggest that we announce the vacancy and interview the candidates, and certainly we should consult with the chair of the committee, but we do not need to do joint
Yeah, no,
committee appointments in general. Okay.
I think just making sure it's like an open announcement so anybody could
Yeah,
apply.
Okay.
That's been working well, I think.
Okay, and the next one was the automatic extension, if the member is willing. And,
I think you've gotta post it,
okay,
but, you know, you really do, but,
okay,
the
so,
present members who are contributory and want another term should be given every consideration.
but they have to interview just like
The-
everybody else.
Yeah, although it's a short interview, assuming,
So I have a
Most people do it.
suggestion. There's another board that I'm on that kind of does a compromise here.
Mhm.
So, we're elected to 3-year terms. At the end of our first term, if we want to continue, you know, there's just kind of a, yes, you can continue. But after the second term, it's an open position. So if you were uncomfortable with having an open position posting at the end of every single term, maybe there's an opportunity for the chair to approve their appointment after their first term, but after their second term ends, it has to be open posted.
Right. That actually, solves another, the term limit problem, because if you wanted to come, if you want a third term, you apply.
Exactly. Kind of killed 2 birds with one stone.
I'm not even-
I'm sorry, bad analogy.
Except when you want to get off the board.
Solves one problem. You can do that too.
Greg, do you have a feel for the longevity of these 150 people on all of these 30-odd boards?
So it varies a lot,
It
but we
varies a
have some very long,
I'm sure we've
Survey.
got like 20 or 30 people that have been there for a very long time.
yes.
Yes, yes. So I've actually learned something as part of working with the boards and committees, that it's my impression that one of the reasons some people stay on is because they don't know somebody who could, or who is willing to take their place. So it's not that they feel they have to be on the board, it's just we've been doing this, you know, replacing with your friends approach for so long and they don't know anybody, they feel an obligation to the town to stay. So if we do introduce more of this open call, I do think naturally some of that will come to a conclusion. But the question is, do we do it right after the first term, or just maybe let them go to a second term and then do the opening?
So the conclusion, there are a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are people in the bucket where, yeah, I'll run again, but if you can find somebody and you put out the ad, somebody responds,
Gone.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're not, I know it's tough getting people in these
Well, that's what
roles.
we're seeing this in the ZBA right now,
Right,
okay? That I was gonna resign, and then I wanted to move back. I know that Catherine Howe wanted to resign, but she's gonna hang in there. You know, it's a
do an open call,
town call, as it were.
and people care about the town, and as long as they feel that it's, that there's new people coming in who care like they do, they're comfortable with saying goodbye and doing something different. That's, at least some of them, not all of them.
So Sarah Melish has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, so I just want to give my perspective. I've been on committees in town since, I think, 2011, on the Finance Committee since 2011. We currently have a problem on the ZBA that we've announced a desire for positions. We've had one person respond. We have no other applicants. Through the years, we've gone through many periods where we don't have any volunteers applying. And I think that if you take a current member and subject them to a cross-examination, that they're gonna say, ooh, I don't wanna be a volunteer, and I think we really need volunteers, and I think we go in waves, and I just think, if I would be insulted if I had to have an interview for a committee and you rejected me. I would never, ever volunteer for another position. That's my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I think what I'm hearing is you serve at the pleasure of the chair. Once you're appointed. Does that make sense? After your 3 years are up, rather than reapply.
Well, yeah, I mean, my suggestion was you let someone continue to serve at the pleasure of the chair for a second term. You know, after 6 years, right, then you get into the term limit discussion. I think fresh ideas are always good, and I personally would like to see.
So
open
I
call.
can wrap my head around a second term at the pleasure, and then a third term go back
Have to
before,
go, yeah.
the position's opened up again and goes before.
Okay,
And
and
then
then
process.
a fourth term.
I think we-
About 2 year, maybe it's,
We stay silent on term limits, we just don't say anything about
No,
it.
no, it's just a question, if after the first term,
you got a second term if you want it.
go
As a
second term
pleasure.
if you want it. The third term, you have to,
Reapply.
reapply. And a fourth term,
Reapply. Why not do
Okay.
that? Are you happy with that? That work for you?
I think we need to allow fresh air into the committees, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you have to reply after the second term. Every
each term after the
each
second.
term.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
And it's, you know, the point Sarah was making is
Still
probably
thinking
correct,
about
but people may not apply, and then you keep serving.
I mean, she's right, but I mean, to reapply, everybody in the room knows you.
Right, exactly.
You know, I'm not, why are you showing up?
For the most part, it's a formality.
Yes,
But it does open the
Unless
door.
you need a specific skill set on the board that, or committee, that would be helpful, you know?
And the challenge is that many of those people, if you're around for 6 years, you're the chair. In many instances, you're the chair. And that becomes a more difficult, and a lot of times you're the chair because you want it,
No, no.
I guess not. So these people are important people.
Oh, that's very important.
I'm sorry, I skipped a section of the fire department.
Oh, the chief position thing?
Go back.
Let's finish this one,
Yeah.
which is, should we have a mechanism for removing appointed members because of lack of fitness and competent neglect of duties? Currently, we have just neglect of duties. If you don't show up, you can be removed. Yes. I think I have a direction to continue working on this. And it really doesn't have to be decided to June.
There you go.
I'm sorry, we got so involved with the vehicle replacement and the staffing update, and what did we want to talk about on the chief's position?
Well, it really was an opportunity to just hear perspectives from Chief Cleary. We're moving forward with the recruiting process for a replacement. There's some, at least one internal candidate that has expressed a high level of interest. But we're also pursuing external candidates as well. So the simultaneous approach. So things are progressing along those lines. But if you wanted an opportunity to hear the chief's perspectives, this would be a good time to do it.
I'm very sorry.
Oh, not a problem.
Okay, so
I actually don't have anything prepared. I saw it on the agenda, but I wasn't sure of what in terms was, because it wasn't really
Okay.
my item, so.
My question is, you've been here 3 years, small town. What does a candidate need to be successful? Besides a thick skin.
Interesting question. I really wouldn't want to shoot for the hip on that one. Greg asked me, and I've been trying to put together some ideas and much more.
You and Greg can have this continued conversation.
Let me ask a question. So I've heard that our county structure here, Essex County structure, is, I guess, interesting. And if you come from outside of Essex County, there's a learning curve, shall we say. Did you run into that, or would it be easier for a chief to have some familiarity with certainly the town, but I'm just thinking the county?
No, I mean, I have some good friends that I already had here in Essex County, and I've made some since I'm here. As a whole, the Essex County Fire Chiefs Association is a very strong, supportive organization, and they get a lot done. There are individual members that don't necessarily work and play well with others, or ascribe to the same type of ideas of what mutual aid are, or how they're supposed to work. But as a whole, I don't think the county as a whole is not an issue. I haven't seen that to be.
I'm just not so much an issue, but the way we run things here is different than outside of Essex County, and there's always a learning curve, but the question is how steep is it?
I mean, a lot of the different fire districts in Massachusetts work very differently. So it's not, you just have to know. I mean, some things that are here, I've seen other places, and some things are here I haven't seen other places, so it's not like an inherently bad system countywide or anything. It's a pretty robust mutual aid system, it's just, some people utilize it and offer more than others.
That's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
If the chief would prefer to, put some more thought into something in writing, then we can share that.
Yeah, I can definitely have something more.
If you can get that to Greg, we just, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. I didn't really have anything. Okay.
Okay. I think we've covered everything up to the liaison updates. John?
I think a lot of my stuff was on the agenda.
Okay.
Parks and Rec, they'll be meeting tomorrow night. I just saw an email come in about pickleball again, all right? Which will, I think, fall on everyone's lap. I didn't see the whole distribution of the email. The playing field is on schedule. And there's no, I think it's end of June, they're planning on being able to utilize that. This Singer Beach is getting, actually it's being used now, okay? So with that comes some of the pitfalls of not being understand, a lot of questions when the bathhouse is gonna open up and what's going on there, but, you could anticipate, but this is the first real nice May I've seen in years. So, I think that Cheryl's done a great job, and I'll know more what's going on with everything else after tomorrow's meeting.
I have no ideas.
And the school committee is meeting tomorrow.
It'll be exciting.
And I guess I probably should go whether or not I would like to.
So the chair, she did post something on Facebook about the next steps, et cetera. So it does appear, one way or another, we need to have a Manchester town meeting, or not necessarily?
Well, it's interesting interpretation of the law. There's a little bit of a gray area. One interpretation says regardless of what has been approved, if the full budget hasn't been approved, then the committees are, the regional school district committee is required to come back with a new proposal. Others feel that if they were to accept sort of the level funded budget, and because Essex approved that without they approved a budget without an override, but that if the school committee accepted that, there's an argument that they do not need to come back.
I believe that's what happened in 2012. That the school committee accepted a budget that fit within Essex's within Essex's non-override. And
Didn't they do that ahead of time, or that was after they disapproved the override? I thought they adjusted it ahead of time.
did they, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
I guess the reason for my question was, should we need to hold a special town meeting? Are we already looking at dates? I mean, there's
Yeah,
not much time, and when would we need to finalize a date on that?
So, in terms of trying to juggle different desires, so there's also a desire to do a correction on the zoning bylaw.
Right, yes.
And so in order to give the planning board enough time to do that, so we're looking at the last week of June. And people get anxious about summer vacations.
We're gonna run into this, that's what we ran into last year.
Um, Yeah, I think we did the second to the last week, but, so the week of the 26th is what we've been looking at as a potential. That Monday or Tuesday, 26, 27, 28th is a Wednesday. I don't want to go much past Wednesday because now we're getting into 4th of July weekend, or pre-4th of July weekend. So that's certainly a possibility if you're comfortable with it.
So we're not targeting anything before that last week?
It'd be very difficult to get, even from the school committee,
Okay.
the necessary. So they're meeting tomorrow night, then they want to hold a public forum.
Right.
And then they're looking to give final approval, June, that first week of June. And so you need to approve a warrant, and then that warrant has to be posted for 14 days. So it's possible we could, squeeze it into the third week of June. You'd have to hold some special meetings to approve things.
I'm trying to, they did not approve the Prop 2.5 override.
Correct.
So is Essex going back to the drawing board, looking at both the school budget component and their operating component?
No,
Just the school?
just the school.
That I don't understand. If you didn't miss it, I mean, there are two factors. I mean, both the operating and the,
So they've approved their town operating budget.
okay, I thought they also passed the school budget.
They approved a level, well, I can't say
But
level.
they did that
funding.
earlier.
They approved a non-override budget for the school.
Right.
Now, whether or not. that
Oh,
was-
it was a contingent.
So,
There was a
no,
there
no,
was a separate vote.
They
It
had
was a separate vote, which passed.
Correct. What failed was the additional appropriation which required the override. So another 260,000, maybe, something like that, in additional funding
Oh,
that,
okay.
that was approved at the town meeting but failed at the ballot. So that means the override is not approved, and the request from the school committee therefore was not approved.
So
It
I'm,
was $280,000 somehow, or,
So to cut Essex by 260 means the total budget has to be cut
Down
by
by
around
400.
six,
Oh, more than that.
650.
yeah, a lot.
Because we're twice that, so that's
Yeah,
280, so
we're 600, that's
we're
total.
still about 6, it's big.
It's a lot of money.
That's low.
All right, Ann, it'll be an interesting meeting.
so back on my logistics question. We're having a select board meeting on Monday, June 5th,
Correct.
but the school committee is voting on the budget the day after, June 6th. Okay, so we won't know what the schools are gonna be doing by that meeting. So the next planned select board meeting is June 19th, but that's Juneteenth.
That's too late.
Right, that's what I'm getting at,
So we would need a special meeting the week of the 5th.
Okay, so that is what I am getting at. Could we, by our next meeting, get a calendar?
Before that, actually,
Yeah.
because,
Okay.
yeah.
Why
because-
don't we plan to meet on the Thursday after the 5th?
Yeah, so that.
As long as you have a quorum, I will not be here, I'll be out of the country, but as long as you're, 'cause I posted in that calendar that I wouldn't be here, but as long as you have your quorum, I agree, you need to meet that week.
That would be June 8th.
So just,
I didn't trust myself.
Get the calendar.
so the other, well, okay. So the other thing we're trying to factor in is when is the planning board going to be ready? So if,
But you said we have to approve something 14 days before the town meeting?
right, so if town meeting
Back
was, the 28th, then you could approve the warrant on the 13th.
Not the 27th?
And, well, the reason why I'm going for the 28th is because if the planning board finishes their work on the 12th,
Right,
then you
select
could,
board meet on the 13th.
13th,
14 days after that? Oh, it has to be posted for, okay.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Right. I mean,
meeting on the
we can
20th.
meet in the morning on the
So if you're gonna wait
13th.
for the planning board, it sounds like we can't publish a full warrant till, or approve a full warrant until the 13th.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
So the question is whether or not you still wanna meet on the 8th to discuss the school portion, or do you just wanna get it all done on the 13th?
I mean, I think we'll know on the,
Oh,
Think about it.
well, I mean,
um,
we'll certainly know a lot by the 5th, but I don't know if we'll know everything in terms of what the school's direction is likely to be. So I think things are gonna be a little fluid, but if people can look at their calendars and look at the 8th or the 13th as possible special meeting dates, that would be helpful.
Negative, yes.
I'm free on the 13th, I'm not free on the 8th, but like I said, as long as you have a quorum, you just gotta meet, you know, or you need to meet.
Either of
So
those dates works for
The
me.
planning board may be able to do some things earlier because town council's reviewing, they may not need to hold official public hearing. They will hold informational meetings, but the proposal to amend section 12, they already held their public hearing and that is still valid. They would do some modifications to that, but so we'll know more by the end of this week about what they have to do.
So then maybe we wanna just take the action, well, we're not having a special meeting, well, this is our last meeting for the month, okay. We're not having another meeting till June 5th.
Well, you have a special meeting on the 25th.
I'm sorry, that's right, 25th,
We're gonna focus on the governance work,
that's right, okay.
so we can give an update at that point. And that's next week.
yeah, I'm zooming on that one.
Okay, so maybe we could add,
Hopefully nail down some dates.
nail
at
down the
least.
dates for the
Yes.
town meeting and any pre-meetings next week at the 25th.
And in that regard, I guess I did speak with you on the 25th, if that meeting can be moved up a little bit earlier.
Right.
Because I have a historic district commission meeting at 7,
Right, so if we met
so this
at
can be at
5:30.
5:30.
We'll accommodate each other.
Oh, thank you.
Sounds good.
That covers the liaison reports, I would say. The consent agenda, minutes of March 29th and May 1st. And the, citizenship report. Do you want to? Has everyone seen the minutes?
March 29th, yes.
Debbie
correct
sent an
ones?
updated one, because I.
Yes, and they were
Correction,
updated, you
yes.
changed some vote or something,
Yes,
so I never even read the first one.
okay.
But, okay, but I don't think I read May 1st,
That was in the original
that
package.
was in the original packet.
I suppose we could postpone the vote on the minutes if no one was sure whether If we don't have a majority, it's,
May I take a straw poll? How many have been able to review the March 29th ones? Okay, so can we pull that out of the, pull the May 1st ones out of the consent agenda? So I move to pull the May 1st meeting minutes out of the consent agenda and approve the remaining consent agenda items listed.
second. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? John?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
I say yes. Okay. The May 1st meeting minutes. So we defer them for the next to our next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
fine. Then it's the town administrator's report.
Very quickly, because I was gonna give you the school budget update, but you already did that, so that's fine. Obviously, tomorrow, election day, at the Memorial School from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Hopefully people will take the time to vote, if they haven't already. The main agenda for tomorrow. And then, as I said, we talked about the school and the needs for, most likely a need to revote a new budget. And then thirdly, it's just highlighting the vulnerability action plan and the rotunda plans that'll be coming before you at your June 5 meeting, most likely. We'll have that on the docket. So that's enough for now.
What action do we need to take on the correspondence?
None,
I'd like
unless you want to give an opinion on those chapter 91 license applications.
Does anyone?
I have no opinion.
I'd like to just hear a summary of the plan for adjudication for the water department. I have read it.
Right, it's complicated. So the short version, the short version is this. So we have a registration, which allows us to withdraw up to a maximum amount of water from our systems, from Bradley and from Lincoln Street Well. And those systems were basically grandfathered, so they're you re-register every 10 years. We re-registered ours we got a new registration back in '23. And that registration says we have the ability and the right to withdraw that amount of water. And then it's up to us as the operators of that system to manage it.
Excuse me, Greg, this is the amount of water per day or per year?
It's per year.
Total per year, okay.
Yeah, it's on an annual basis.
Okay, fine.
It does have a registration that is an average daily,
And I know that we're over.
point
that.
0.72.
0.73, yeah.
0.73, yeah. But my understanding is that that's an average, you can go over that.
Yeah,
because
we're
some
over
days
that a lot in this.
In the summer, we're over
Summer.
that, in the winter, we're way under it, so. That total yield is what I believe is what governs. So the state has now proposed new drought regulations that allow them to basically usurp some of our management powers over our registration number. And the complaint is that the state is looking on a regionalized basis.
Countywide.
So they're not taking into account the specific attributes of a given watershed. And so what they may decide is appropriate for the whole county may not really be applicable to us, because each watershed is unique in how it is impacted and how it operates. And so this complaint says, state, you've overstepped your bounds. and this is pushing back. So there are 20 some odd municipal water systems that have joined and filed very similar complaints with the state in an effort to have them back off a bit on this new regulation of yours. So that's what this is about.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we're not alone.
We're not alone, no. In fact, this is being headed up by, I think Springfield,
I think
is
it's
the
Springfield,
largest
yeah.
system.
We're just an added complaint, right? We're just-
Right,
Just jumping on board.
yes, yeah. So you approved jumping on board 6-8 months ago.
And I don't believe this costs us anything either at this point, does it?
I'm sorry,
There's no real cost to the town at this point.
very minimal. It's a couple $1,000, $3,000. So that's what this is.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, I would like a motion to enter into executive session for Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting has a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares, not to return to open session.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Joe,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
yes. Okay,